A violet dawn seeped through the ragged windows of the Tower of the Hand, scattering pale shafts of light upon the cracked flagstones where wildfire had scorched the night before. Smoke still hung in the air, faint and acrid, drifting beneath tattered banners that bore the crowned stag in a field of fiery red. In the throne room's echoing stillness, Stannis Baratheon stood alone before the Iron Throne he had claimed with blood and iron. His black beard was flecked with ash. His breath steamed in the chill air. Each step nearer the jagged seat rang against the metal shards beneath his boots. Yet he walked as though upon ice, unwilling to let emotion breach his taciturn shell. Behind him, the doors groaned open. Ser Davos Seaworth limped through in damp gray wool, smelling of salt and smoke. The fingers he still possessed curled upon his sword belt, a nervous sailor's tick he had never managed to lose. He bowed low, too low, Stannis thought, and straightened with the stiffness of a man whose wounds were many and fresh. "Sire?" Davos rasped, voice raw from shouting orders atop the city walls. "The small folk are quiet for now. What Lannister banners remain have fled to the west. The gates are ours, the docks as well." Stannis's jaw clenched. "And the Tyrells?" "Retreated an hour past sunrise, Lord. Their swiftest ships outpaced our fireships. A dozen gold cloaks gave chase until the river gate flooded with them." Davos shook his head. "No sign of Ser Loras. The Reachmen left their dead." Stannis studied the throne's splintered blades, a twisted monument to ancient arrogance. The dragon lords who forged it had never imagined a Baratheon hand upon their work. Robert's storm-swept laughter echoed faintly in his thoughts, a ghostly thing that made the morning colder. Stannis silenced it. He had no time for ghosts. "All must bend the knee," he said at last, fingers flexing in the painful hush. "Simon Staunton, Lord Gunser Sunglass, every man who bled for me upon the Blackwater shall be rewarded. Davos, you will lead a delegation to the September. We will bury our dead by nightfall." Davos hesitated. "The High Septon died in the fire, your grace, and the sept is half-ruined. Green flame still crawls across its steps." "Then we shall honor the dead where they fell," Stannis replied. "A pyre upon the great September's broken stones. Their ashes will mingle with the city's sin. The Queen's men may preach of cleansing, but the iron of our victory must cool first." He turned away from the throne before the prickling urge to sit could overpower him. He had dreamed of iron often since Storm's End, but never of comfort. Stannis preferred hard wood and sea winds, yet the realm demanded its symbols. Soon, too soon, he would be forced onto that spike-grown seat, and vows would be sworn beneath its shadow. "Send riders to Storm's End and Dragonstone," he ordered. "Summon Lady Melisandre. I would speak with her away from fire." Davos bowed once more and departed, cloak whispering across the stone. King's Landing stank of dead men and dying fires. Sullen drifts of smoke clung to every doorway, staining the marble of the Red Keep and the mortar of the poorer estates alike. Flea Bottom overflowed with charred hulks of wagons and bodies both noble and base. Yet amidst the ruin, the people whispered. A new king had taken the city, a lean man of iron and justice, unbent and unbargaining. Some feared him. Others prayed he might prove less cruel than the lion he unseated. Most simply watched and waited. From a balcony in Maegor's Holdfast, Lady Sansa Stark gazed past broken crenellations toward the blackened river, remembering green fire painting the night sky. She shuddered. The smell of wildfire still clung to her hair despite her maid's scrubbing. Cersei had vanished in the chaos. Rumors said the queen had fled into hidden tunnels beneath the keep, taking Tommen and Myrcella with her. Joffrey's charred corpse now lay in the sept's shadow, eyes melted, golden crown yet gleaming amid puddled flesh. Sansa pressed fingers to her lips. She had prayed for a new dawn, yet this one felt colder than any northern winter. Still, no Lannisters walked these halls now. The stag's banners fluttered. Perhaps the north might still see justice. Footsteps approached. Ser Brian Faring, lean and dark-bearded, halted beside her. "My lady," he said, voice gentle for a night grown in Storm's End's tough winds. The king requests you break your fast with the court in an hour. Court? She echoed. Aye. He would present living proof of Lord Eddard's innocence. Your father was no traitor, and you... He hesitated, caught by the fear in her eyes. You are under his protection. Sansa clasped her hands. Will the king send me home? Ser Brian's gaze flicked south, toward the road to the reach where rose banners once flew. When the realm is secure, I think. He bowed stiffly and withdrew, the hush of his cloak carrying questions he could not voice. Beneath the Red Keep, in twisting tunnels of slick stone, Cersei Lannister knelt in near darkness. A single lantern guttered at her knee, licking light across iron bands of a sea chest. Her hands trembled, not from fear but fury, as she pried the lid. Inside lay a gown of simple brown wool, a purse of copper stags, and a half-empty wineskin, a commoner's escape kit packed on a drunk whim long ago. Mud on my skirts, she whispered, the words dripping venom. To flee my own city in rags. Her father's gold, her son's crown, the jade eyes of the Red Keep's lion statues, all were ash now. But Tommen and Myrcella lived. She would smuggle them beyond this Butcher King's reach if she had to claw her way to Casterly Rock. Stannis would hunt her. The city would betray her. So be it. A lioness with cubs cornered had torn worse men than the new usurper. She ripped open the wineskin, swallowed fire, and rose. The tunnels sloped toward the river. Somewhere beyond stone and seawater waited a smuggler's skiff paid for in advance. Gold dragons bought many loyalties, even in defeat. Above, bells tolled, not for victory, but for the dead. Their mournful clangs chased her deeper into shadow as city and kingdom alike turned their gaze to the Iron Throne. In the Maiden Vault's damp confines, Melisandre of Ashai watched flames dance upon a blackened brazier. Her red silk gown was smudged with soot, yet her eyes glowed hotter than any fire. Visions flickered in every ember. Towers falling beneath wings of shadow, seas boiling, a sword of living light rising from bloodied water. She had foreseen Stannis' triumph upon the Blackwater, though the manner of it had surprised her. No victory of wildfire, but of grit and steel. The flames rarely lied, but they always misled those who read them with mortal longing. She would read again, here, far from the pyres, until the Lord of Light revealed the next path. A servant thrust open the door, panting. "The king summons you, my lady." Melisandre smiled. She had sensed his gaze upon the fire for hours. Stannis hungered for certainty. She hungered for the one true king who might wield Lightbringer against the darkness. Yet in last night's screams she had glimpsed more than victory. She had seen wings, vast and red as blood, beating upon a black wind out of the east. Dragons, 3 of them, coiling above Dragonstone's old towers. She rose, smoothing ash from her sleeves. If the ancient beasts truly flew again, they would answer to one master alone, the mother of dragons. And if R'hllor willed it, the fireborn queen would kneel before the rightful king, or burn beneath his light. Far across the waters of the narrow sea, a sea wind tore at tattered sails painted with a black 3-headed dragon. The Balerion, once a merchant cog out of Pentos, now limped west beneath a gray, observant sky. Its decks crawled with unsullied, their bronze spears clattering as the waves rocked the hull. Near the prow, Daenerys Stormborn stood barefoot, silver hair whipping. Drogon perched upon the mast above, wings spread to catch the gusts. His brothers, Viserion and Rhaegal, circled overhead in lazy spirals, shrieking at seabirds. The girl who had walked the Red Waste was gone. In her stead stood a woman tempered in fire and blood. Karth had betrayed her. Astapor had knelt. Yunkai had fled before her wrath. Meereen awaited, but the stars she read in the desert had shown her a grander destiny, one written in the halls of Westeros, upon the stones of her birth. Rumor carried by sell-sail tongues spoke of the Stag King's sudden rise, of a fallen lion, of a realm dividing anew. Opportunity, weakness. Ser Jorah Mormont approached, thick cloak clinging damply to his shoulders. "King's Landing lies in ruins, Khaleesi," he said. "Stannis Baratheon rules there now. He will not welcome Targaryens. That city was never my dream, she replied, keeping her eyes on Drogon's silhouette against the clouds. Dragonstone is my cradle. Let Baratheons guard their scorched city. We shall take the rock that birthed dragons. Ser Jorah bowed, yet his brow furrowed. Dragonstone may hold garrisons still loyal to Stannis. The Blackwater cost him dear, but he remains formidable. The Onion Knight is said to command the narrow sea. Daenerys's lips curved into a quiet smile. Let them marshal every oared ship beneath every banner they can muster. They have never faced dragons. She glanced aft where Missandei conversed with Grey Worm. Prepare the men. When we sight land, I will speak to the fires. There can be no fear among us. A gull screamed overhead as if echoing her resolve. Dragonstone's walls rose upon a spine of volcanic stone, dark as molten glass under midday sun. Black basalt towers shaped like wyverns snarled at the sea, their stone jaws silent guardians of old Valyrian secrets. Davos Seaworth knew every curve of the fortress. He had smuggled onions beneath these ramparts during the siege of Storm's End. Now, returned as Hand of the King, he felt the weight of new responsibility heavier than smuggler's gold. The Tidebreaker, a swift galley flying Stannis' crowned stag, skimmed through choppy waters, oars thumping, sails trimmed sharp. Beside Davos stood Maester Pylus, ink-stained hands clutching a roll of parchment. Inventories, tithes, and demands for men and grain. Dragonstone would swallow gold faster than a whale taking krill. Yet the king insisted the fortress must be provisioned. The galley docked beneath the stone drum's looming shadow. Smoke trickled from chimneys. Bells rang a warning. Davos frowned. Dragonstone's bells were seldom used save in storm or siege. A dockhand hailed them.
Ship sighted, sir.
Out beyond the Golden Ghost. 3, maybe 4. Not ours. Davos's stomach tightened. Ironborn. Could be Lysine, could be pirates, the man said. Yet the crows fly restless today. Davos gazed eastward. The horizon shimmered, waves gleaming. Against that silver sheet, faint shapes moved. Slender hulls, sails black and red. And above them, wings caught the sun, wheeling shadows far too large for gulls. Mother have mercy, he thought. The stories are true. He barked orders. Cast off lines. Ready the scorpions, every bolt we have. Signal the towers to sound storm horns. Men scrambled. The narrow docks became a hive of motion. Davos turned to Maester Pylus. Send a raven to King's Landing at once. Tell his grace, dragons come.
Pylos Peuterd, spectacle sleeping.
Dragons, sir?
Surely not. Look yourself, Maester. Davos pointed as a jet-black shape swooped low over the fleet, wings spanning a farmhouse's breadth, scales rippling like oily armor. Flames licked from its jaws, though it had not yet found a target. Pray the winds favor the raven. The maester went pale but hurried toward the rookery. Davos drew his sword, a smuggler's hand hardly fit for steel, yet here he stood at Kingdom's shield. The dragons would come in fire and thunder, and the men of Dragonstone would answer with iron and courage. He only prayed iron would suffice. Lightning forked across twilight skies as Stannis studied Dragonstone's silhouette through the maester's glass. The raven's message had arrived at dusk, blood-red wax broken by Melisandre's slim fingers. Dragons. 3 of them. The last dragons had died half a century past, their skulls rotting beneath the Red Keep until Cersei flung them into the bay. Yet now, at the realm's most fragile hour, the old world breathed fire again. In the chamber's hearth, flames rasped, casting Melisandre's tall shadow upon the wall behind him. "The Lord of Light once more tests you, sire," she said. "A dragon's fire can forge true steel, or cleanse the unworthy." Stannis ground his teeth. "Prophecy speaks of 1 hero, my lady, not 2. I have no wish to burn some Targaryen girl, but I will not yield the realm to her superstition. She is no girl." Melisandre's eyes gleamed scarlet. "She is Stormborn, blood of the dragon, baptized by fire. In her veins flows the ancient flame. Yet the night is long and the darkness full of terrors. If she wills to break you, she must first survive you. The ruby at her throat pulsed as if with its own heartbeat. And the dragons have not chosen sides. They answer to flame. Stannis turned away. I answer to justice. He had seen his brother Robert's newborn rebellion ride dragons of rumor for years. Targaryen loyalists whispering of distant heirs, of red priests proclaiming Azor Ahai in foreign tongues. Yet dragons alone would not win the Seven Kingdoms. The realm was weary of war. He had taken King's Landing at terrible cost. The riverlands burned. The north warred upon itself. Another pretender threatened chaos. He slammed a gauntlet fist upon the table. Have Lord Penrose muster every ship along the Blackwater. We sail at dawn for Dragonstone. A soft rain fell across the decks of the Balerion as Dragonstone's torches winked into view along the jagged coast. Daenerys's heart thrummed with a rhythm older than drums, older than Valeria's rise. Drogon roared at the scent of volcanic smoke. The night air shimmered with the heat of his breath. Above, Viserion and Regal answered, their cries weaving through thunderclouds. Below, Unsullied shielded their torches from the rain. Grey Worm shouted orders. Lines were readied, grapples prepared. The sea's black mirror broke upon the hull with every wave, casting salt into Daenerys' hair.
Ser Jorah Krevtits af her side, sort drawn.
If the castle resists, we scale the walls while your children rain fire, Khaleesi. Yet their stone is ancient, dragon-carved. It may not burn. All stone cracks, she murmured. When heated, then quenched. She remembered stories Viserys once recited of Balerion, the black dread melting Harrenhal's towers in torrents of living shadow. Drogon was smaller, yet fire lived in him all the same. Spare the small folk, she added. We fight soldiers, not children. As they neared the long stone quay, signals flared along the battlements. Bright orange sparks from scorpions primed to loose iron bolts. A horn bellowed, a deep mournful note. Dragons screamed in answer. Then the night split open. Bolts streaked like comets toward Drogon's silhouette. One grazed his wing. Scales shattered like obsidian shards. He hissed and banked sharply. Daenerys' blood raced. Dracarys. Drogon's throat swelled crimson. A river of fire erupted, pouring upon the parapets, swallowing men, scorpions, banners in a single exhalation. Stone steamed. Screams rose into the thunder. Viserion and Regal swooped beside their brother, each releasing torrents of blue and green-white flame that danced along Dragonstone's narrow causeways. The Unsullied leapt ashore beneath the cover of chaos, shields clanging against stone. Grey Worm's spear found the throat of a Dornish archer. Missandei followed, dagger drawn though her hand shook. From a high tower, bells clamored. Alarm, surrender, perhaps prayer. Daenerys could not tell. Rain hissed upon burning oil, sending clouds of steam swirling. Her eyes stung, but she saw men drop their weapons. Others fled toward inner gates. The fortress's heart still beat, but its outer skin blistered. And yet, within that rain of flame, arrows flew. An arrow struck Yora's pauldron, glanced off. Another pierced an unsullied helm, dropping the warrior in silence. The defenders still fought with desperate will. Dragonstone's blood pumped strong. Daenerys gripped the wood of the gangplank as the ship collided with the quay. Knights of the Stormlands emerged from a postern, shields raised, their tabards bearing the crowned stag. She recognized the badge from Cartha's whispers, Baratheon of Dragonstone, Stannis' men. A voice bellowed above the tumult. Hold fast! Through the smoke strode Ser Davos Seaworth, cloak sodden, bald head glistening with rain. His sword gleamed dull in the dragonfire's glow. He spied Daenerys, silver-haired amid black sails, and his face tightened with grim recognition. "Dragon Queen!" he shouted across the gap. "This rock is sworn to King Stannis Baratheon. Depart and spare these souls." Daenerys met his gaze, pale violet eyes unwavering. "Bend the knee. I was born here in storm and salt. Dragonstone is mine by blood and fire." Davos hesitated, turning to the men who looked to him for courage. Then, above them all, an unearthly shriek cleaved the night as Drogon landed upon the stone drum's roof. The impact cracked slate tiles. Flame curled from his nostrils, illuminating his rider standing below, small, mortal, yet unafraid. Some men dropped shields and knelt. Others raised crossbows, faces twisted by terror. Davos raised his sword again, as if one blade might dam a river of flame. Yet before further blood could spill, a new blast of horns rolled across the water. Ships, dozens, great war cogs under full sail, oars beating the waves into froth. Their banners caught the lightning. The fiery heart of R'hllor, the crowned stag of Baratheon, quartered with a burning sun. And at their prow, black armor glinting wet, Stannis Baratheon stood beneath a storm lantern, face carved of stone, eyes bright as forged steel. Rain hammered the deck of the Fury as Stannis studied the burning fortress he once called home. Dragons wheeled above, impossible predators of legend, yet he felt no fear, only calculation. He had beaten armies, storms, and brother kings. Fire was fire. A king must face it. Archers to the forecastle, he commanded. Signal the scorpions. Lord Penrose hesitated. Your grace, scorpion bolts are few. The beasts move too quick. Then we strike the woman. Stannis's voice carried like iron across the deck. A dragon cannot behead a kingdom alone. Lightning flashed. Thunder boomed. Rain sizzled as it hit the deck lamps. Stannis's fleet fanned out, hemming the Balerion against the quay. On the Fury's prow, Melisandre stepped forward, arms raised, ruby pulsing. She began to chant in a language that sounded like crackling flames upon cold stone. With each syllable, the storm's thunder seemed to answer. Across the water, Drogon reared and roared, wings beating. Yet Melisandre's voice rose louder, until the very rain seemed to hush. Flames on Dragonstone's ramparts sputtered, then burst sky-high, twisting into shapes, serpents of red fire coiling in the wind, clawing at the storm clouds. The dragons shrieked confusion. Daenerys felt her heart jolt. The air throbbed, thick with raw heat despite the rain. Ser Jorah stepped protectively before her, sword bared. Sorcery, he hissed. Melisandre's flames blossomed into a great wheel of fire that hovered above the fortress, blazing as bright as a newborn sun. Within its center shone a sword of pure white light, spinning, hurling sparks into the dark. Drogon faltered, claws slipping on wet slate. Viserion and Regal veered off, wary. Shadow on flame, Melisandre cried. Lightbringer calls. On the Fury's prow, Stannis drew the charred sword she had dubbed Lightbringer. Its blade glowed faintly red in the storm. As he lifted it, the fiery will answered, roaring brighter, pouring down a rain of glowing embers upon the sea. Water hissed, turned to steam. The iron prows of his ships glistened as though bloodied. Daenerys's breath caught. Never had she seen such sorcery, fire shaped by will alone. Yet she felt no terror, only fury. These flames were false reflections, parlor tricks against the true fire of her children. She stared at Stannis across the water, then raised her voice in defiance. Drogon, she whispered. Dracarys. The black dragon expelled a cascade of fire that ripped through the rain, met the ember rain, and exploded into a wall of blinding light. Ships reeled. Men screamed as sails caught. Lightning cracked overhead, a demon's whip. Yet through that maelstrom, the wheel of fire persisted, fed by Melisandre's chanting. Lightbringer's dull ember flared white-hot in Stannis' hand. He raised it high as if to challenge the gods themselves. On me, he roared, and leapt from the railing into a boarding skiff already being lowered. Knights followed, brandishing swords, shields emblazoned with the burning heart. Oars bit the sea. On the quay, Davos rallied his Stormlanders. Unsullied locked shields. Grey Worm's voice met steel upon steel. Missandei sheltered beneath a stack of crates, praying softly in High Valyrian. And so the battle for Dragonstone began. Not merely of war engines and iron men, but of fire against faith, dragons against destiny. Rain fell, steam rose, and thunder's drumbeat set a grim cadence. The night had eyes of emerald and ruby both, watching, waiting to judge whether the song of ice and fire would find a new chorus here upon shattered stone. The clash at the quay lasted through the darkest watch. Ash and seawater mixed into black sludge beneath stamping boots. Unsullied spears claimed knights in gleaming plate. Stormlander axes clove helms of bronze. Drogon circled overhead, unleashing gouts of flame when clusters of Baratheon men threatened to overwhelm the queen's line. Yet each time his fire tore into the foe, Melisandre's will blazed anew, drawing heat from his breath, twisting it into ribbon-like tongues that snaked toward the sea. Grey Worm drove his spear through the eye slit of a red-armored knight. Blood sprayed hot across his bald scalp. He kicked the dying man aside and wheeled to find another. Beside him, Ser Jorah fought with grim efficiency, slashing low, thrusting high, body moving as if weighted by memory. Rain plastered his hair to his forehead. He saw Stannis himself stride up the quay, Lightbringer blazing now as if truly alive, though its contradictory glow flickered like dying coals in a brazier. Jorah's heart pounded. Here was a king forged in siegecraft and iron discipline. Stannis carved through unsullied with relentless precision, every blow a judgment. Yet the spears slowed him. Pierced gaps in his armor drew blood. He fought through it, jaw clenched. Jorah advanced, shield raised. "Your Grace, Daenerys Stormborn claims this castle by right." He shouted over the din, "You need not die here." Stannis's blue eyes burned. "No child of the Mad King will unseat me." He lunged. Their blades met with a clash that jarred Jorah's shoulder. Steel screeched on steel. They traded blows, Stannis' style brutal, economical. Jorah's a northern bear's strength tempered by Essosi footwork. Sparks fountained. Rain hissed upon their swords. Above, Drogon landed with bone-shaking force upon the causeway beyond the melee. His roar drowned battle cries. Men scattered. Stannis and Jorah both staggered as a shockwave of hot wind swept over them. Lightbringer's glow dimmed, as if the sword itself feared the greater fire. Melisandre cried out something in the tongue of Ashai, raising both hands. Flames licked her arms, dancing up her sleeves, yet she did not burn. Instead, the fiery will overhead seemed to pull inward, shrinking to a spear of white fire that lanced toward Drogon's flank. The dragon shrieked as burning spears of pure light peppered his scales, leaving sizzling wounds. He lashed his tail, smashing a siege tower to splinters. Daenerys, standing amid unsullied ranks, felt her heart tear with Drogon's pain, but her fury grew hotter still. She strode forward, eyes on Melisandre. "Leave my child," she commanded, voice cold as obsidian. "You meddle with power you do not comprehend." Melisandre's crimson eyes met hers across the courtyard of steam and ash. "All power is the Lord's to grant or take," the priestess intoned. "Even a dragon burns for him." She reached toward Lightbringer. Its glow flared once more. Daenerys lifted her arms. "Drogon!" she cried. "To me!" The black dragon bounded forward, crushing corpses, wings mantling. The spear of light shattered against his chest, scales incandescent. A heartbeat later, Drogon unleashed a cone of searing flame that swept over Melisandre's wheel, over the priestess herself. Fire met fire, the courtyard filled with white brilliance. Men collapsed, blinded. When the light faded, Melisandre still stood, hair aflame like a burning crown, face shining with ecstasy. Yet her gown was charred to ash about her, ruby pulsing furiously. She looked upon Daenerys with awe and terror mingled. "You are born of fire," she whispered, "a child of prophecy." Daenerys did not relent. She stepped closer, Drogon lowering his head at her side, rumbling thunder in his chest. "Kneel," she said, voice low. For a breath the world seemed to hold. Rain hissed on melted stone. Wounded men moaned. Stannis locked gazes with Davos across a clutter of broken shields, seeing his priestess surrounded by dragon flame. His jaw tightened. "Enough!" he bellowed, voice hoarse. "Hold!" The command rippled through his men. Spears lowered, swords paused uncertain. Unsullied two held, eyes shifting to the queen. Stannis strode toward Daenerys, blood running down his arm. Lightbringer guttered, embers fading. He stopped 5 paces away, measured her with the cold arithmetic of a siege. "Dragon Queen," he said, chest heaving, "I will not kneel, yet neither will I see my realm devoured by war without end. You claim birthright, I claim justice. Let us parley." Daenerys's breath steamed. She studied him. The stubborn set of his mouth, the fatigue lines, the intensity that knew no compromise. She remembered tales of his siege at Storm's End, a gaunt knight standing unbroken. She lifted her chin. "Speak, then, but know this castle is mine." Stannis's eyes flicked to Drogon. "Hold for now. Blood only dulls cause. Dragonstone may serve us both." He gestured toward the burning ramparts where men still died. "If we continue, there will be naught left but cinders." Daenerys exhaled slowly. "I will hear you," she said. Her gaze slid to Melisandre. The priestess now knelt, flames extinguished, ruby dark. "We speak at dawn. Call off your men." Stannis nodded once. "Davos," he called. The Onion Knight stepped forth, face streaked with ash and rain. "Signal withdrawal." Across the courtyard, horns blew low and weary. Unsullied lifted battered shields. Stormlanders staggered back. Rain fell heavier now, washing crimson rivers into the sea. High above, Viserion and Rhaegal settled upon the stone drum's broken parapets beside Drogon, restless tails lashing. Their eyes glowed in the lightning flashes like embers of distant volcanoes. Night bled toward day as hostilities cooled, but neither side sheathed their convictions. Under a sky of smoldering purple and gold, a fragile truce formed upon ancient Dragonstone, where Fireborn Queen and Iron-Willed King would weigh prophecy against justice, birthright against law, the old world's dragons against the new world's flame. Dawn crept over a sea the color of black glass. The dragons perched upon tower tops, wings folded like vast cathedral roofs. Their breaths drifted in steaming clouds. On the castle's upper terrace, a table of weathered driftwood, a relic of Aegon's conquest, stood between the opposing hosts. Stannis arrived clad in fresh plate, crownless still, Lightbringer sheathed. Davos remained at his right, bandaged but unbowed. Behind them stood a clutch of Stormlander lords. Selmy of Griffin's Roost, Cairn of Nightsong, Tarth of Evenfall. Their eyes lingered on Drogon with equal parts wonder and dread. Daenerys approached from the east with Ser Jorah, Grey Worm, and Missandei. She wore a gown of smoky gray silk, dragon brooch at her shoulder, silver-white hair braided in 3 ridges to mirror her children. She took no seat. Stannis inclined his head slightly, no bow, but acknowledgement. Daenerys mirrored the gesture. "The realm bleeds," Stannis began, voice clipped by exhaustion. "The North wars, the Riverlands burn. Tywin Lannister will rally at Casterly Rock. The Tyrells lick wounds in Highgarden. If we break each other here, the kingdom cracks beyond mending." Daenerys studied his lined face. "You speak of unity, yet you deny my right of birth." "I deny only tyranny," Stannis retorted. "Your father was mad. His reign ended in wildfire. Should his daughter rule because dragon lords once conquered? I hold to law. Robert's children were bastards. Thus the crown passed to me by right, eldest surviving brother." "By rebellion's right," Daenerys countered. "The Baratheon line would not exist if not for usurpation." A flicker of frustration crossed Stannis' eyes, but he reined it. "Argue lineage until the sun dies. The small folk care only for bread and peace. Let us forge both." The terrace quieted, wind sighing through dragon wings. "What do you propose?" Daenerys asked. Stannis glanced at Davos, then back. "Alliance. Marriage, perhaps. Hostages, certainly. A joint regency until the realm heals. You possess dragons, 3 unmatched weapons. I possess legitimacy in the eyes of lords tired of shifting banners. Together, we defeat Lannister, Tyrell, Greyjoy, and protect the realm. Ser Jorah stiffened, but Daenerys raised a hand. Alliance is ground for discussion, she said slowly, but subservience is not. I will not serve as consort to the man who burned my brother on Dragonstone years ago. Stannis' mouth thinned. It was no brother I burned, but a traitor, Lord of Storms plotting my death. Names matter, Daenerys replied, pale lashes narrowing. As du deeds. Yet I see you are a man of iron. I will not dismiss you lightly. Melisandre stepped forward, robes freshly donned but still smelling of smoke. Her ruby glowed once more. The Lord of Light shows a path. Fire and blood united against the darkness. Dragons and Lightbringer together could forge a blade to cleave the night. Daenerys turned, eyes like frozen lavender. I do not follow your god, priestess, nor do my dragons. They obey me alone. Stannis lifted a hand, forestalling further words. Faith can wait. The realm comes first. Davos took a scroll from his belt. If your graces permit, we have terms drafted. Division of offices, joint council, relief for the Riverlands. A trumpet blast cut him short. From the seaward wall came shouts. A lookout cried, "Sails, many sails." Lord Penrose scanned the horizon with a glass. Red, gold, a lion. Daenerys and Stannis both stepped to the parapet. Far across the swelling waves, a fleet of war galleys bore down. Sails crimson, lions rampant. Sunlight flashed upon gilded rams. At their center, a towering ship flew twin banners. The golden lion of Lannister entwined with the trident of House Tully. Jaime Lannister's voice carried in memory. A lion does not concern himself with the opinions of the sheep. Yet here sailed lions who sought not opinion but crown. Stannis exhaled. Tywin moves faster than rumor. He means to retake his prize. Daenerys laid a calming hand upon Drogon's scaly neck. Let him come. Stannis looked to her, then to the dragon's smoldering eyes. The gulf between them narrowed in that moment, not in friendship but necessity. Very well, we speak no more of marriage this dawn. We speak of war. He extended a mailed hand across the driftwood table. Daenerys studied it, then placed her own upon his gauntlet.
Storm volgt stil met Dragonborn flesh.
Together, then, she said. Thunder rumbled. Not from sky, but from dragon throats answering the call of battle. Wings unfurled. Ships cut through foam like knives through cloth. And within the crucible of Dragonstone forged anew, a realm's fate turned upon a single fragile pact between fire and iron. Night fell again, heralding a sky alive with embers. On Dragonstone's beach, laborers hauled barrels of pitch and bundles of scorpion bolts toward waiting galleys. Torrent lamps burned blue, casting eldritch hues across wet sand. Unsullied and Stormlanders worked side by side, distrust etched in every glance but purpose uniting their arms. Melisandre walked between them, chanting low prayers, anointing weapons with fragrant oils that flared red when touched by torchlight. Some men crossed themselves, others spat and kept their distance. Along the ridge above the beach, Davos oversaw the loading with Lord Penrose. A biting wind carried scents of sulfur and salt. The Onion Knight rubbed aching ribs and stared out at the Lannister fleet massing under the moon's pale eye. Bong of war drums rolled across the water. Penrose muttered, "Even with dragons, we are outnumbered 2-1. Numbers mean little when ships burn," Davos replied, though his tone lacked conviction. Below, Ser Jorah drilled unsullied in shield wall techniques for shipboard combat. He moved with fervor, driving them to adapt quickly. Nearby, Grey Worm conversed with Ser Selmy of Griffin's Roost, two warriors of different worlds sharing tactics in sparse words. Unity forged in urgency. On Dragonstone's highest tower, Daenerys stood with Drogon perched behind her, his tail wrapped around cracked stonework. Regal and Viserion circled above, dark comets beyond clouds. She watched the Lion's fleet gather torches, like swarming fireflies. Too bright, she thought. They flaunt their numbers. Arrogance will blind them. Footfalls approached. Stannis emerged, cloak snapping. He joined her at the parapet. Neither spoke for a time. "I will board the Fury at dawn," he said at length. "Our ships form 2 lines. You unleash your dragons upon the vanguard, break their spirit. My men will exploit." Daenerys nodded. "Drogon prefers chaos. He will carve corridors of flame for your galleys to punch through." Stannis glanced back at the black dragon's shadow. "And you? Will you ride him close over the water?" She recalled the Battle of Cartha's gates, the assault on the slavers of Astapor, the fires of Yunkai. "I will ride," she said simply. Stannis grunted approval. "Your courage does you credit." She eyed him sidelong. "And yours, to stand beside a dragon you cannot bend." "Necessity breeds boldness," he said. "After tomorrow, perhaps the realm will believe in miracle as well as law." A gust tousled her silver hair. "Miracles are well and good, but victory is forged by will." He looked out at the fleet. "Then let us will the lions to drown." The 3rd dawn since Stannis' victory over King's Landing broke red as freshly spilled blood. Dragonstone's harbors bustled. War drums, horns, shouts in Valyrian and Westerosi tongues. Ser Jorah mounted Rhaegal's back beneath Daenerys' instruction, each movement deliberate, though his face betrayed awe and fear. Grey Worm prepared to ride behind her on Drogon, a spear strapped across his broad back, an honor he accepted with stoic grace. Stannis oversaw final checks upon the Fury Scorpions, Lightbringer strapped at his hip, resolve unshakable. Melisandre raised her hands, ruby blazing like a small sun. "The night is dark and full of terrors," she intoned, "but your flame shall not fail." Unsullied thrust spears skyward. Stormlanders banged swords upon shields rhythmically, echoing the prayer with smithy thunder. Hope coiled with dread in every chest. The tide turns even the largest vessel, Davos thought as he took his place at the Fury's helm. But may the wind favor justice this day. Sails unfurled, canvas snapping. Drummers struck a steady beat. Oars dipped in unison. 2 fleets, one under Dragon's shadow. Across the strait, the Lannister host formed a shimmering crescent. Gold helmets glinted like coins tossed upon waves. Trumpets blared. Daenerys rode Drogon above the Fury's mast as the fleets converged. She scanned enemy decks, scorpions swiveling toward the sky, archers readying flaming arrows soaked in tar. Drogon's chest vibrated beneath her, an earthquake harnessed by leather straps. She patted his neck. "Now, my love, show them." Drogon roared and plunged, wings cupping air. Rhaegal and Viserion followed, Jorah clinging grimly. The wind tore Daenerys' words away, but her will burned bright. Drogon felt it banked hard. Flames licked his throat. Below, Stannis raised Lightbringer. "Advance!" The Fury surged ahead. Other galleys followed in wedge formation. Davos felt timbers creak beneath his feet as the hull cut foam. Arrows arced overhead toward Drogon, but his scales deflected them like summer rain. Where he passed, ships caught fire, sails exploded, men leapt screaming into the sea. Yet bolts from scorpions began to fill the sky, dozens, then scores, black shafts tipped with barbed steel. One bolt struck Rhaegal's hind leg, tearing flesh. The dragon shrieked. Jorah nearly lost his seat. Still Rhaegal fought on, belching green flame onto a war galley, turning its decks into boiling pitch. Viserion strafed the vanguard, a curtain of blue fire that split hulls like rotten fruit. But the Lannisters pressed. Their flagships, Golden Roar, Red Jester, Tully's Pride, poured catapult stones and corals into the dragon's path, driving them higher. Below, the Fury's wedge smashed into the enemy center. Grappling lines were cast. Decks collided. Stormlanders spilled across gilded rails, swords rising and falling like pistons. Davos guided the helm through wreckage, avoiding burning hulks. He saw Stannis leap onto a Lannister deck, Lightbringer cutting a fiery path. The sword burned brighter with each foe slain. Melisandre's magic, Davos suspected, though he trusted not such power. Yet right now, that flame rallied every heart under the stag. On high, Daenerys surveyed the chaos. She spotted Tully's pride swinging wide to flank Stannis' left. Its ram, plated in gold, could sunder the Fury's hull. She leaned forward. Drogon there! They dove. A hail of arrows rose to meet them. One found Grey Worm's shoulder, piercing chain links, but the soldier held fast. Drogon crashed atop Tully's pride, talons ripping deck planks. Fire erupted, engulfing scorpions and crew alike. The great ram melted into a gleaming waterfall of gold. Yet a scorpion bolt loosed blindly pierced Drogon's wing, punching through membrane. He bellowed agony. Daenerys' stomach lurched as they faltered. She tightened her grip. Steady! Below, Stannis glimpsed the dragon's wound. He signaled archers to cover. Lightbringer flared, sparks flying like bees. He carved through another helm, then spun to face the golden roar bearing down. Lord Lannister's flagship, sleek and deadly. On its quarterdeck, Tywin Lannister stood in lacquered crimson armor, white mane streaming. His green eyes found Stannis across the water. He raised a gauntlet hand. 20 scorpion bolts released in unison, sleeting toward the Fury. Davos cried warning. Stannis braced. 2 bolts slammed into the Fury's bow, shards of timber raining. A third struck the mast, splintering oak. The Fury lurched. Men tumbled. Lightbringer's glow dimmed. Stannis wiped spray from his eyes. Return fire! But the Fury's forward scorpion was shattered. The crew scrambled to reload stern weapons. Tywin smirked across the gap and signaled again. Daenerys turned just as a volley of quarrels streaked toward Stannis' flagship. She pulled hard on Drogon's reins, ignoring the pain in his pierced wing. They wheeled, blasting a jet of flame that engulfed half the bolt's midair, turning iron to slag that splashed harmlessly into the sea. The rest clattered off the Fury's side. On the golden roar, archers recoiled from the sudden heat wash. Tywin's eyes narrowed, calculating. Stannis looked up at Daenerys astride her wounded dragon, blazing like a comet. In that instant, the gulf between them collapsed entirely. Victory or death, shared upon the same blade's edge. He raised Lightbringer high, saluting her. She dipped Drogon's head in answer. Then, together though apart, they pressed the attack. Drogon swooped low, incinerating ballistae. The Fury's crew hurled grapnels, drawing the golden roar closer. Unsullied and Stormlanders stormed its rails side by side. Steel rang. Men died. Davos bounded onto the enemy deck amid crashing waves of bodies. He saw Tywin Lannister, still regal amid the melee, swordwork precise. Stannis advanced opposite him, Lightbringer blazing. Knight of Lions versus King of Stags. They met, blades clashing. Sparks flew. Tywin's strength surprised Stannis. Age had not dulled him, yet Lightbringer's unnatural heat singed the lion's blade. Tywin parried, countered, pressed, step by step. Stannis' breath rasped. He yielded ground, pivoted, struck. Tywin caught the blow, riposte flashing. Davos lunged to intervene, but a lion guard barred him. Across the deck, Daenerys landed Drogon amid flames, dismounted swiftly. Grey Worm leapt to protect her. Unsullied carved a path through Lannister guards. Daenerys spotted Stannis' duel and realized the stakes. Should Stannis fall, the alliance would shatter. She cried for Drogon to aid, but the dragon was wheeling skyward, harried by bolts. Tywin pressed again, blade nicking Stannis' brow. Blood ran. Lightbringer flickered. For a heartbeat, the sword seemed to dim as if doubting its master. Tywin took that moment, thrusting. Stannis twisted, caught lion steel on his pauldron. Plates buckled. He staggered. Tywin raised for the kill. Then a roar split the sky. Drogon dove wings beat once, twice, and released a stream of flame across the deck. It scorched empty timbers at first, but the heat wave knocked Tywin back, breaking his stance. Stannis lunged, Lightbringer piercing through gilded chestplate into flesh. Tywin gasped, eyes widening. The older man stumbled, blood blooming crimson against crimson armor. He fell to his knees. Stannis withdrew the blade. Around them, battle stilled. Lion Guards froze. Stormlanders lowered weapons. Unsullied closed ranks. Tywin looked at his killer with bitter resignation. "The lion's roar ends," he whispered, blood frothing his lips. "But beware the debts he owed." Stannis offered no words. Tywin toppled, armor clanging. Silence lingered until the sea's waves slapped hulls anew. A horn sounded from a distance. Lannister retreat. Their remaining ships disengaged, rolling sails to catch the wind, fleeing south. Stormlanders cheered. Unsullied raised spears. Dragons circled victorious. Stannis turned to Daenerys across the deck. Their gazes locked. Iron-willed king, fireborn queen, blood-slick, weather-beaten, victorious. Lightbringer now glowed steady, its pale light mirrored in her violet eyes. "Justice is served," he said. "And blood paid," she answered. Grey Worm knelt beside Tywin's corpse, wiping his spear. Ser Jorah approached regal, binding the dragon's wounded leg with torn sailcloth. Davos limped, searching for survivors, heart heavy with losses and strange hope. Above, the sun broke through clouds, glinting on shards of broken masts and glimmering dragon scales. Smoke drifted across the sea, carrying with it the scent of ash and victory. That evening, fires burned on Dragonstone once more, but not of war. Funeral pyres lined the beach, honoring the fallen of both houses. Stormlanders and Unsullied stood together in solemn ranks. The dragons perched silent upon cliff edges, eyes reflecting flickering flames. Atop the ramparts, Melisandre spread a white cloth and placed upon it shards of burned scorpion bolts, a lion's broken sigil, and a drop of the queen's dragon blood caught mid-battle. She whispered invocations older than ass-high, seeking glimpses of what must follow this fragile dawn.
Flame spent, twisted.
Torm and pyre and rolling bay. The wind it sang my lullaby, of burning wave and blood-red sky. Daenerys joined on the second verse, her accent lilting oddly in Westerosi cadence. Sailors paused to listen, lines slack in weather-cracked palms. When the song ended, gray clouds seemed a shade lighter. Regal took flight first, wing beats kicking spray 50 feet high. Jorah clung awkwardly to the saddle frame, but his grin was fierce as a Sellsword's charge. Viserion followed, riderless, spiraling about the mastheads with bored ease. Drogon launched last, tail smashing a lantern pole to splinters. He soared above the furious prow, banking until he shadowed the fleet like a living storm cloud. Horns sounded, oars dipped, Dragonstone dwindled astern. For days the voyage was more slog than saga. The coast of Crackclaw Point offered bleak watchtowers abandoned by terrified garrisons. At Maidenpool they found burnt manors emptied by plague rumors. Fog clung to cliffs. Gulls shrieked at dragon silhouettes. Twice, Pentoshi traders attempted to hail them, but one look at fiery banners and scaled escorts sent them tacking south. Below decks, Unsullied slept stacked like cordwood, helms for pillows. Stormlander archers drilled arrowfire between rocking lantern posts, cursing every time a deck swell through their aim. Davos stalked hatch to hatch, correcting knots, splicing lines frayed by ice needles. His missing fingers ached with ghost pain. Old sailors' superstition said such ache foretold tempests. He prayed himself a liar, but the storm burst north of White Harbor. A wall of black clouds swallowed the sky, exhaling sleet that sheathed rigging in glassy sheens. The Fury's mainmast cracked under load. Men scrambled with pitch and cloth. Waves taller than minarets slammed hulls, tossing cogs like sling stones. Dragons fought wind currents screaming between frost-sharp gusts. Drogon's wounded wing reopened, spraying droplets of deep red that hissed when mingling with snow. Daenerys felt each droplet like a spear sting. "Ease! Ease canvas!" Davos roared, but words snatched away. A Pentoshi cog slewed broadside to a crest, snapped in two, grain washing out in muddy swirls devoured by the hungry sea. Unsullied aboard hurled themselves for lines. Some reached, others vanished. Stannis clutched the quarterdeck rail, jaw locked. "Signal Summer's kiss. Keep dragons aloft until the worst passes." he ordered, though the dragons needed no such bidding. They soared above the squall, fiery throats searing channels of hot air that broke some gusts, but not all. Below, Melisandre stood barefoot atop the Fury's prow, arms raised. Snow sizzled into steam on her skin. She chanted over and over, "Light that burns, light that binds, lead us through the darkest winds." A ruby glow pulsed brighter with every lightning flash, painting her in silhouette like a burning wraith. On the sixth swell, a spar from the Fury's busted mast swung free, driving into Septon Bar's chest. He dropped where he stood, breath bubbling pink. Davos knelt, but the man's eyes glazed. Another soul to feed the sword, he thought grimly. Yet as suddenly as wrath began, the sea fell away. The storm front rolled eastward. Gutted from within by rising thermals, the dragon's furious wing beats conjured. Sunlight speared through rent clouds, casting columns of gold upon foam-scummed waters. The fleet bobbed bruised but intact, save the lost cog. Silent relief spread like balm. That night, campfires glowed upon a shingle beach south of Skagos. Regal nested in driftwood, blood-slick bandage tightened by Yora's steady hands. Viserion prowled the shallows, snapping at silver-darting fish. Drogon circled overhead until heat haze blurred his outline against a half-moon. Stannis strode along tide line, cloak snapping, until he found Daenerys seated alone atop a boulder, staring north where the wall lay unseen beyond horizon. He stopped short, gaze lingering on her hair streaming silver in moonlight. "You saved ships today," he said. "Dragons hate cages," she replied, eyes not leaving the dark. "Even storms are but larger cages. I have caged men with fewer bars," he murmured. He removed a glove, flexed weather-cracked knuckles. "The dead won't wait for spring. We make Eastwatch in 3 days if winds hold." "We will," she said, after a silence. "When the war above the wall is won, what then? Your claim and mine cannot both stand. We will be forced to reckon." His breath fogged between them. "Perhaps the realm will choose for us. Or prophecy." He almost laughed, a brittle sound. "I have chased prophecy until my feet bleeded. Law remains my compass. And mercy, perhaps," she said, surprising him. He looked away. "Mercy can be a cruelty when mislaid." The tide whispered at their boots. In the hush, both heard distant howls, wolves or wind neither could tell. Above, the red comet of the ruby flickered on Melisandre's tower perch. Stannis shivered despite himself. Daenerys rose. "Sleep while you can, Lord of Storms. Tomorrow we chase dawn again." He watched her walk toward the dragons, shadow merging with scaled giants, and knew that should dawn fail, she might still carry fire enough for all. At Eastwatch 3 days hence, black smoke curled from every chimney, signaling distress. Ravens circled like dark snowflakes. Guards upon the battlements waved tallow torches in frantic arcs when dragons first appeared, unsure if salvation or doom came on leather wings. The Fury drew alongside the moss-slimed quay. Frost rimed her rails, yet no ice blocked birth. Winter had not fully sealed these waters. Stark-built cranes groaned as they lowered rope ladders. Unsullied leapt across gaps iced white and slick, planting scarlet dragon banners atop frozen barrels of salt fish. Jon Snow met them in the yard beneath the sallyport. The young Lord Commander's hair was caked with rime, dark curls stiff as holly leaves. His black cloak hung heavy with wolfskin. At his back stood 90 men, all that remained fit for battle, faces hollowed by cold and fear. Beyond them, within the stronghold's shadowed arches, crowded hundreds of wildlings. Gaunt mothers clutching babes, spearwives eyeing Baratheon shields, giants crouched like uneasy mountains. Snow approached Stannis and Daenerys beneath fluttering banners. He bowed. "My lords, my lady, you come at our last hours." The walkers press hard home, south of the Frostfangs. Whites number in tens of thousands. Stannis clasped the youth's forearm. "We hold them here or all falls. Show the terrain." Jon produced a ragged hide map, runes etched by dragonglass blade. He spread it on a crate. Daenerys kneeled to study. "Hard home is here," he said. "Steep cliffs behind, Narrow beach before. Evacuating survivors risks bottleneck. Dragons clear bottlenecks, she noted. But cold will sap their strength. We stack driftwood for fire breaks, Jon replied. Oil the beach. When your dragons ignite it, the dead burn. While they burn, we ferry living across shuttles to Eastwatch. Davos nodded. Galleys can anchor offshore, boats ready. Wind patterns. Prevailing east, Jon said. Flame may blow inland onto cliffs. Risk to refugees. Better singed than dead, Stannis muttered. Daenerys touched the icy hide. Dragons will flame high to draw walkers back. But the others themselves, dragonfire alone may not fell them. Jon's gray eyes were haunted. Valyrian steel can, he whispered. Dragonglass too. We have little of either. Stannis straightened. Then we temper Lightbringer tonight. Melisandre stepped forward, red hair whipping wind. The blade is hungry, she intoned. A worthy soul must feed it. Royal blood for a royal flame. An uneasy hush fell. Stannis' gaze flicked toward Shireen, now seated by a brazier with Missandei teaching her Giscari word tiles. Horror shadowed his eyes. Fleeting but real. He shook his head. No, he said. No more children. Melisandre's lips parted. But before priestess or king could speak again, Daenerys rose. If royal blood is needed, she said, voice calm. Take mine. Stannis stared. You would? Cut me if it fires your sword. I have survived flame. Let us see if I can survive steel. She bared her forearm, pale skin prickling in wind. Melisandre approached with a ritual dagger of dragonglass. Jon caught his breath. Yet as the blade touched Daenerys' skin, the ruby at Melisandre's throat burst with blinding crimson. An unseen force slammed the priestess back. She reeled, eyes wide. The fire rejects this offering, she gasped. Blood too hot. Dragonfire cannot feed dragonfire. Daenerys exhaled slowly, pulling sleeve down. Then Lightbringer stays hungry, and we rely on tooth and claw and courage. She met Stannis' gaze. We are enough. He nodded once. We march at dawn. Hardhome was a bowl of horrors carved in ice. Snow fell so thick torches glowed like drowned suns. Refugee fires guttered along the beach, their warmth more memory than fact. Above, cliffs loomed jagged-toothed, caves yawning black as grave mouths. And beyond the tree-line of half-dead pines, a wall of pure white moved. Not wind, not mist, but death given form. The silent army of whites advanced in lockstep. Empty eyes gleaming blue, limbs twisted, armor fused with frost. At their center rode pale figures astride dead horses, armored in shattered glaciers, swords glowing cold as moonlight. Galleys anchored offshore as planned. Longboats beat surf, crewed by storm lords and wildlings alike. Dragons swooped overhead, each pass scattering the endless flock of death yet barely thinning ranks. Drogon's flame cut incandescent arcs through snow-laden air, igniting driftwood pyres that roared against night. Regal and Viserion strafed flanks where icy wolves darted to outflank the living. Unsullied poured from beachhead barricades, shields raised, spears thrusting into dead flesh that felt no pain but shattered under dragon-forged steel. On the shore, Jon Snow fought beside Grey Worm, Longclaw singing arcs of obsidian glitter. Every fell blow released a hiss of steam. White skulls split like river ice in thaw. Giants hurled boulders that crushed knots of corpses only for more to crawl over shattered limbs. Stannis commanded from a ridge, Lightbringer in fist though its glow remained faint. He barked orders, repositioning crossbow companies where lines sagged. Cannon fire of scorpion bolts cracked frozen air, skewering whites pinned against flaming ditches. Davos manned the boat corridors, hauling children aboard, his splintered hands raw on tarred rope. Daenerys rode Drogon above the maelstrom, senses merging with his. Fire coursed through her veins, the screams below muffled beneath roaring blood. She spotted a cluster of white riders pushing hard at the north flank. If they breached, whites would flood the evacuation channel. She urged Drogon into a stoop. Flames gushed, but a rider raised a hand and sheets of freezing mist erupted. A shield of searing cold that extinguished fire mid-air, turning it to black glass shards. Drogon shrieked, thrust skyward. Frost rhymed his muzzle. A spear of ice whistled past Daenerys, missing by a finger width. Panic fluttered, but harder emotions banished it. She had flown over Slaver's Bay storms, fought harpoons at Meereen. She would not fall here. She angled Drogon above the rider, then dove again, this time breathing fire only at last moment. The ice shield cracked but held. Yet Writhe of Skagos, a Stormlander archer perched on a felled pine, loosed a dragonglass-dipped arrow that pierced the rider's visor. Blue light snuffed out. The figure collapsed, armor shattering like brittle candy. Instantly, 100 wights convulsed and fell inert, as if their strings were cut. The living cheered, but elsewhere screams rose. Another Ice Knight hacked through unsullied lines, killing men so cold their wounds smoked. Grey Worm led a counterstrike, but the knight's blade sheared spears. Jon Snow sprinted, cloak snapping, longclaw raised. His sword met the Ice Knight's. Sparks of blue and silver burst. The clash rang like cracked bells. Steel bit ice, ice bit steel. They traded strokes in a blur. At last Jon fainted, then cleaved diagonal. Valyrian steel met neck of frozen flesh. The knight's head rolled, shattering on rock. Again wights collapsed in droves. Rising smoke carried wails of others still fighting. The dead were countless. For each felled walker another legion pressed. Pyres guttered low. Fatigue clawed every limb. The evacuation neared its limit. Boats overflowed. On the ridge, Stannis saw Lightbringer flare. Faint, then brighter. He stared, bewildered. It pulsed in his hand like a beating heart. He remembered Melisandre's words. The blade drinks when righteous fire burns. He lifted the sword overhead. Flame erupted along its length, orange first, then white so bright it bleached color from world. Men paused mid-swing, faces lit ghost pale. Wights recoiled though they did not feel fear. The sword's glare carved a path down the slope. Stannis plunged into the fray. Each stroke left arcs of molten air, melting snow to hissing vapor. Wights ignited at touch. He fought like a man unchained. Unsullied rallied behind him. Stormlanders shouted his name. Dragons wheeled overhead, flames reinvigorated by brilliance below. Daenerys saw the white sword slash sky and felt something shift. A music in the blood of the world. Drogon roared approval. She guided him behind the sword's blaze, raking fire where Lightbringer could not reach. Between sword and flame the dead faltered, but the largest white rider remained atop the far cliff, watching impassive. Armor of ice plates gleamed. Crown of frozen jagged horns ringed his skull. He raised frost-forged spear, leveled it at the battlefield. Wind died in that instant. Snowflakes hovered, motionless. A deep note thrummed beneath the earth like a drum from the bones of giants. The spear flew, an impossible arc, straight for Drogon. Daenerys felt its chill before it struck. She screamed command, Drogon banked, but spear nicked his flank. The wound steamed, flesh icing. The dragon faltered, altitude bleeding. Rhaegal cried above, Viserion dove to shield. Stannis saw the fall. He pivoted, Lightbringer blazing. Shield the queen, he bellowed. Archers turned, releasing a volley of dragonglass at the cliff. But the White King brushed arrows aside with wave of hand. They shattered mid-air. Jon Snow realized the cliff path lay through a narrow goat track choked by dead. He called to Grey Worm. Together they hacked a corridor, flanked by giant 1-1 who swatted wights like flies. They reached the base only to be met by 15 new Ice Knights, drawn to protect their master. Meanwhile Davos loaded last boat full of weeping children. He glanced back and saw Drogon spiraling lower, wings stiffening. The beach still teemed with trapped wildlings. He looked to sea, space for one more run if men rode like devils. He barked at sailors, but they hesitated. Hands bled and spirits too. Then Shireen appeared at gunwale, eyes wide as storm lanterns. She began singing. the Dragonstone cradle song spreading across water. Her small voice trembled yet holding steady. A sailor picked up the chorus, then another. The rhythm took their arms. Oars struck sea anew. Drogon landed hard beside the pyres, ice creeping along wound. Daenerys slid from saddle, hand scorching at white frost. She pressed palm to scales, willing heat from her blood. Fire flickered along her fingers, tiny candle flames on pale skin. She whispered in Valyrian, "You are flame, my child. Remember." Drogon's nostrils flared. He exhaled sparks. Frost receded a finger's width. The White King raised second spear. Stannis braced but could not reach cliff in time. Melisandre, perched on ridge, flung her arms wide. The ruby at her throat exploded in a shower of molten crystal. A column of red fire shot skyward, colliding with the spear mid-flight. Spear melted to hail of glitter. Flames rained embers of smoking rubies on snow. Melisandre collapsed, eyes glass empty, but a smile on burnt lips. Her sacrifice ignited something greater. The pyres roared anew without touch of oil, fire towers spiraling. Whites within 50 yards burst like dry tinder. The White King hissed and retreated, cloak vanishing behind ridge. Jon Snow and Grey Worm emerged, battered but alive. Their path now clear, they gave chase, but horns from north sounded retreat. The others faded into swirl of snow, dragging darkness with them. Only corpses remained, thousands smoldering, thousands more inert where the walkers will deserted. Silence fell heavier than any shout. Ships ferried last refugees as dawn's first light pinked eastern sky. Giants waded chest-deep to galleys, hoisting children onto decks. Unsullied collapsed beside stormlanders, snowflakes melting on steaming helms. Lightbringer dulled again, its burden spent. Stannis looked to Daenerys where she knelt beside recovering Drogon. Their eyes met across ash-white field. No words passed, yet each understood. This was but first clash in the Great War. They had one dawn for now. True night still loomed. Jon Snow approached, grime-streaked. "We buy time," he said quietly. "But the wall alone cannot stand forever. We must call banners of every kingdom." "Banners blow in wind," Stannis said. "Fire and blood stand." He sheathed Lightbringer. Daenerys rose, snow fluttering from her cloak. "Then let us stand together, and may wind carry word of this night to every hearth. The dead can be burned, the cold be broken, and the living, when united, need bow to no darkness." Behind her, Drogon spread wings against newborn sun, droplets of melted ice scattering in rainbow shards. The light touched his scales, painting them obsidian gold. Men gasped, hope rekindled. On distant horizon, a shadow flickered, perhaps cloud, perhaps watchful eye of an enemy that did not sleep. It lingered a breath, then slipped behind swelling ridges of snow-laden cloud. But in Hardhome's smoking ruins, humanity's thin flame flared brighter. A king of iron, a queen of dragons, a bastard of ice, and 1,000 nameless souls who dared cling to life between the jaws of death. Their breath rose as one into cold air, white mist twisting skyward like newborn banners of a realm reborn. Cold dawn bled into a colorless sky the morning after Hardhome's reclamation, casting a thin silver glow over the ragged camp wedged between Eastwatch's frost-rimmed walls and the churn of the shivering sea. Smoke from cookfires coiled through frigid air, carrying the sour tang of boiled oats, charred seal fat, and pine resin. Snow still drifted fitfully, and every gust from the north rattled half-frozen canvas like brittle parchment. Yet a hush of wary hope beat beneath each heart. Hardhome had not been a victory so much as a reprieve, but men who survived impossible nights learned to cradle even scraps of promise. Daenerys emerged from her tent just as the sun's pale disk cleared a scabrous bank of cloud. She had refused fur-lined silk for plain wool, yet still she felt the bite. Her breath steamed. Bits of frost clung to the ends of her silver braids. Drogon's great shadow sprawled across the snow beside her, black wings mantled to capture meager warmth. He dozed fitfully, flank rising and falling in slow, shallow rhythm. the scab on his wounded side shrinking under salves compounded from pine pitch, boiled lichen, and powdered dragonglass. Jon's crude northerner's remedy, yet it seemed to blunt the chill that gnawed at flame-made flesh. Regal and Viserion perched atop Eastwatch's outer parapet like gargoyles wrought in jade and cream marble, tails wrapped over talons, necks tucked into chests to conserve heat. Now and again a hiss of irritated fire ghosted from their nostrils, turning to crystalline flakes before hitting stone. The Night's Watch garrison had volunteered to man those walls alongside them. Men clad in black shuffled back and forth with braziers, feeding coals to keep the dragons content. No one complained. Each man understood how thin the line between life and oblivion ran. Daenerys cast her gaze across the assembled host. Unsullied drilling in silent ranks near the strand, Stormlander archers fletching black-feathered shafts, wildling spearwives exchanging wary looks with Baratheon bannermen over cauldrons of thin broth. Children tumbled at the edges, rag-clad, hollow-cheeked, yet laughing when patches of sun broke through and scattered prismatic gleams across ice. She held those sounds close, letting them sink beneath layers of fear and fatigue. A crunch of footsteps heralded Jon Snow's approach. The Lord Commander carried no sigil this morning save a tattered black cloak crusted with frost. Grey Pup, the youngest of the surviving giant hounds, padded at his heel, muzzle stained blue where he had gnawed dragonglass arrowheads clean. Jon halted beside her and followed her stare to the dragons and the uneasy camp. "They sleep lighter than men," he said, voice rough from smoke and cold. "If the enemy approaches, we'll hear it in their throats before any horn." Daenerys nodded. "Let us hope their throats stay silent long enough for us to mend wings and hearts both." She flexed her gloved hand, recalling how Drogon had faltered in midair, how ice had crept along black scales like fast-growing lichen. "Regal's bandage?" "Holding," Jon answered. "Yora says the arrowhead burrowed shallow. Flesh will close within a fortnight if the wind behaves. For Drogon," he hesitated, "I've never seen ice bite flame so deeply. Yet he lives." A fierce surge of warmth prickled in her chest. "And living dragons breed living will." Jon shaded his eyes against the dawn. Tormund counted 16,000 wildlings safe inside walls. Fewer than half of those can wield spear. His mouth tightened. "If the walkers gather numbers again, Eastwatch will fall like driftwood." "We need allies," Daenerys said. "Lords of the Vale, the North, the Rivermen. Any who still draw breath after years of lion teeth and burning fields. And we need grain." She exhaled white mist. "But first we need belief. Men south of Winterfell still whisper that white shadows are wildling lies." "Ravens fly," Jon murmured. "But words of doom grow lighter with each mile they travel. Sansa writes from Winterfell that Lord Glover calls the walkers phantoms of bastards' fancy. Lord Royce demands proof on his doorstep. Proof, if it reaches him too late, will devour him before he can name it." Daenerys turned, surveying the ragged silhouettes of ships anchored near frozen breakers. Crews chipped ice from rigging. Sheets of rime cracked and fell like shattered mirrors. Above them, the sky was clearing to reveal a razor slice of blue. "Then we bring proof," she said, a decision crystallizing inside like quartz veins. "Not stories, not charred bones, living proof. A captive walker, bound in chains of dragonglass, paraded before every castle from the Eyrie to Old Town. Let them taste the cold we have tasted." Jon's brows knitted. A dangerous prize. One slip, one shattered chain. "That is why the dragons fly," she replied. "A single breath ends all risk." He did not answer at once. Snowflakes gathered along his lashes until he blinked them free. East of Hardhome, a gorge splits the frostfangs. Tormund swears the walkers marshal there beneath a glacier's vault. "If we strike swift," Daenerys's pulse quickened. "We strike. Assemble those reckless enough to ride under wings. We choose a mountaintop for our snare. Burn every corpse around so no fresh whites rise. Then we take what we need." Jon inclined his head. "I'll rouse the willing, half a dozen at most. Giants milk coursing where common sense should be." A hint of humor ghosted his lips before fading. Your dragons. Once Drogon's wing mends enough to steady him? He flies by dusk, she said, though part of her feared the boast. He is fire. Fire heals through burning. Jon glanced south where pale smoke plumed from Stannis' brazier circle atop Eastwatch's inner courtyard. The King of Storms knelt stripped to tunic sleeves. Lightbringer laid across bare thighs while he murmured through clenched teeth. Davos watched nearby, arms folded, skepticism warring with concern. Melisandre's corpse had been wrapped at dawn and set upon a pyre of dry pine. Her ruby shards glittered now inside a simple wooden box waiting burial. Without her, Lightbringer's flame had guttered back to faint warmth. Yet Stannis persisted, striking blade with whetstone, lighting brands, seeking some spark of renewed blessing. Your other ally suffers doubts, Jon said. Let him, Daenerys answered. So long as he sharpens steel for the night, doubt is but flint. Fall it hard enough, and sparks follow. She turned for the healer's pavilion where Missandei brewed willow bark for feverish wildling babes. Each step sent cold needling up through broken snow crust, but purpose burned hotter than any hearth. By mid-afternoon, icicle spears hung from the ramparts like rows of crystal teeth, yet activity surged. Grey Worm drilled unsullied spear pairs in formations adapted for narrow ice trails. Two shield bearers hold a wedge while the rear rank thrusts over shoulders. Nearby, Ser Selmy taught Stormlander youths the quick casting of dragonglass darts. Fine black triangles bound with leather loops that could be flung in clusters. Wildling hunters fashioned bolas from reindeer sinew, weighting them with obsidian chips. The air rang with clank and thud, the forging of unity. On the parapet's lee side, Shireen sat cross-legged with Claw, a red-haired girl of the then's barely older but twice as tall. They practiced letters scraped into snow with burnt twigs. Daenerys paused to watch, warmth stirring at the sight. The king's daughter and a girl born in cannibal valleys, heads bent over makeshift scripts. The world reshaped itself here in simple shared lines. Missandei joined her, steam wafting from a clay cup. Willow bark and mint, she said. For your throat. Daenerys accepted gratefully. How many wounded? Unsullied 23, Stormlanders 51, wildlings too many to count. But most will mend. Rations thin. Yet Tully ships from White Harbor reach us tomorrow with grain and salt pork. She hesitated. Word came Ravenwing that Sansa Stark sends sleighs south from Winterfell, loaded with root vegetables and preserved fish. A good sign. Daenerys sipped bitter decoction. The North remembers, they say. She glanced at the clouds, thin wisps now. Daylight stretched like freezing honey across snowfields. We depart at dusk for the gorge. Have you finished mapping? Missandei produced a leather scroll marked with hasty symbols. Crags here and here for lookout posts, a frozen tarn halfway that may bear weight. If we lure a walker onto thin ice, Daenerys studied. Ice we can shatter with Rhaegal's flame from below. Trap it then bind. Yora volunteers to ride Rhaegal again. He will ride, Daenerys said, but I will stand on Drogon. Missandei exhaled softly. The wound is ours to bear, Daenerys replied. Dusk bled lavender when the raiding party assembled. Jon Snow with Longclaw strapped across his back. Tormund Giantsbane bearing Warclub and Grin. Grey Worm at the head of a 5-man unsullied spear wedge. Ser Selmy and 2 Stormlander scouts. Jorah Mormont swathed in polar bear hide astride Rhaegal. Daenerys on Drogon's back in flight harness of boiled leather threaded with Valyrian steel rings. Above the battlements, Viserion clawed mortar impatiently. Keen to join though, he carried no rider. Stannis watched from the courtyard, Lightbringer's hilt in white-knuckled grip. Bring it alive, he called to Daenerys. But if hope fails, burn every scrap. She nodded, then gave Drogon the word. Night air thundered as wings beat sky. They arrowed north along the ragged shoreline where black rock met ocean like shattered obsidian teeth. The Frostfangs rose ahead, ranks of jagged peaks draped in winter's shroud, valleys choked with pine so laden they sagged beneath glittering burden. Stars pricked through thinning cloud. Half-moon cast silver traceries across endless snowfield. Frost crystals formed on eyelashes within breaths. Yet the world below glowed faintly from the dragon's internal warmth, creating shimmering auras of refracted heat. As they neared the gorge, Jon signaled halt. They descended onto a wind-scoured ledge above a bowl-shaped tarn glazed in hammered glass. Snow drifted in eddies, patternless. Tormund knelt, pressing palm to ice. Thin, good, breaks easy under heat. He slapped Jon's shoulder. We draw the pale demons here, pin them like fish in shallows. Grey worm deployed unsullied along rocky ribs overlooking the tarn. Spears braced for entangling shots. Selmy and scouts set rope snares baited with blood-soaked goat hides. Yora alighted near Daenerys, Regal's talons gouging crust. Dragons circle perimeter, he suggested. Box them inward once they appear. Daenerys surveyed glacial walls streaked with ghostlight. Viserion above the tarn, Regal on eastern bluff, Drogon with me mid-air to bait. She touched Drogon's neck ridge. Steady now, my love. Remember the cold. Drogon rumbled assent, breath pluming red sparks. They waited. Minutes slid by slow as frozen sap. The only sounds, wind sighing through ice fissures, occasional creak of a bow stave, faint rustle of wings overhead. Snow deepened. Night's black tapestry unrolled fully and stars multiplied. Then a hush deeper than silence smothered all. Wind ceased. Snowflakes froze mid-air. An ache stabbed ears, as if air itself had turned to glass. Jon's hair lifted though no breeze stirred. Frost traced fresh lines across steel. Out of the western Trelean shapes emerged. First one, then two, then six white shadows reflected by starlight. Tall, gaunt, crowned in crystalline crests, eyes burning cobalt. They moved without disturbing snow, as though ghosting across memory. Behind them a phalanx of whites advanced. Dead wildlings, dead crows, even dead giants lumbering on shattered knees. The walkers paused at Tarn's edge, heads tilting toward dangling goat hides, then upward toward dragons. Daenerys felt Drogon tense. She whispered in high Valyrian, "Patience!" She signaled Yora. Regal shrieked, banking over treetops with a lash of jade flame, hurting whites forward. Unsullied loosed spears tipped with dragonglass. Some struck giants, tearing bone. Others lodged in armored torsos. Yet walkers did not flinch. Their hollow gaze tracked Drogon. Jon stepped forward on ledge, Longclaw raised to moon. "Come!" he shouted, voice echoing. "Come see the warmth of men." A walker glided onto Tarn. Thin ice groaned under weight yet held. Two more followed. Jon swallowed. "Now," he breathed. Daenerys urged Drogon into descent. Black wings churned chill into maelstrom. She unleashed a jet of controlled fire downward into Tarn's surface before the walkers. Ice exploded into steam. A web of cracks spidered outward. The lead walker lifted hand. A wall of blue mist erupted, pushing flame aside, but cracks had spread beneath. With an echoing crack, the ice shelf gave way, plunging three walkers into bubbling ink. Grey worm signaled. Unsullied heaved nets of chain soaked in dragonglass shards. Metal hissed on water, sinking around thrashing shapes. Yet the cold foam froze near instantly, forming jagged craters that buckled chain loops. One walker climbed free, claws of frost anchoring to rim. Jon leapt from ledge, landing on knee-deep ice to intercept.
Longklaf met frostblijde in ringing crash.
Sparks of pale fire burst. While they dueled, another walker rose within broken basin, blue light flickering beneath slivers of ice. Drogon landed heavily, tail sweeping whites aside in geysers of snow. Daenerys dismounted, brandishing a spear of black steel that Jon had forged beside Gendry the previous night. She thrust. The walker caught shaft, strength cold and immense. Frost crept along the weapon toward her hands. She grit teeth, channeling heat outward. Metal glowed red, frost retreated. She twisted, driving point into joint of neck. Crystal cracks spread. The creature shattered into shards that tinkled across ice. Jon still fought the first. It pressed relentlessly with blade of rime so cold air sizzled at each stroke. His breath came ragged. The walker fainted, slashed. Then a dragonglass dart sewn by Selmy pierced its temple. It froze mid-strike, fissured, collapsed. Tormund lowered sling, roaring triumph. A mournful screech tore skyward. From ridge above, a larger shadow loomed. The White King himself atop undead elk, crown of icicles jagged like blade points. He raised hand. Corpses of slain wights heaved upright anew, including fragments of dismembered torsos. Giants rose, arms missing, yet still they moved.
Viserion dove, gauting fire.
The flame hit invisible barrier of chill. Steam erupted, swirling. Through haze, the White King's gaze caught Daenerys. He dismounted, striding onto Tarn. Frost formed path under boots. Yora spurred regal downward, unleashing torrent of emerald fire. The White King raised spear of black ice, whirled it overhead, slicing flame apart. Splinters of green crystal cascaded. Chains! Jon shouted. Grey Worm's unit rushed forward, hauling reinforced net weighted with iron anchors and carved obsidian discs the size of shields. They spread it across ice in semicircle. The White King advanced indifferent, blue glare fixed on Daenerys. Drogon snarled, but she held him. "Not yet," she whispered. She walked onto ice, spear reversed but end forward in challenge. "You wanted fire," she said in Valyrian tongue. "Come taste it." The White King thrust spear. She parried, turning glancing blow that nevertheless split shaft rings and numbed fingers. She countered low, aiming for knee. Ice armor deflected. He moved faster than men, each motion silent. Yet not silent enough. His heel stepped upon net's edge. Grey Worm's men yanked anchor lines. Iron teeth bit ice, folding net upward to snare. The White King slashed, severing links, but momentary pause gave Jon time to close. Longclaw swung. The blade met ice spear in shower of sparks. Steam blasted around them. For heartbeat they pressed locked, eyes inches apart. Grey meeting impossible azure. Jon roared, channeling every grief, every night terror, every face lost. The Valyrian steel bit deeper. The spear cracked. Daenerys thrust her heated spear through net mesh into the gap Jon created. Point pierced cold armor. Black steel bored toward heart. Crackling pops sounded. All blue light within the White King extinguished. He disintegrated in wave of frost dust that rolled outward like dandelion seeds. A hush swallowed gorge. Whites collapsed. Giants slumped, shattering legs. Snowflakes resumed falling. Wind returned. The void had closed. Drogon exhaled billow of flame across broken remains, fusing them into harmless melt. Regal landed, Yora nearly falling with exhaustion. Viserion circled overhead, triumphant screech trailing. Jon leaned on Longclaw, chest heaving. Frost clung thick to beard. Daenerys stepped beside him. They surveyed what lay. Fragments of net, dragonglass shards glowing faintly with residual heat, a heap of inert bones and shattered ice where a king of the dead once stood. Not all the walkers had perished. 2 remained, pinned beneath collapsed giants at Tarn's far rim, bodies unbroken but weapons shattered. Their eyes still burned, yet limbs were trapped. Unsullied ringed them with spear points. Tormund clapped Jon's shoulder. "We have your captive." Jon turned to Daenerys, ice powder fluttering off cloak. "Proof enough to rattle every castle door." "Proof," she agreed. "And a warning hammer." She gazed at shattered spear fragments. The White King fell to steel and dragonglass joined. That lesson we must shout to all living. They bound the surviving walkers in dragonglass chains, muzzled with iron masks rhymed inside with obsidian powder, then hauled them upon sled of mammoth ribs. Dawn's earliest blush graced far horizon when the party lifted skyward on dragonback, captive thrashing in futile rage. Eastwatch erupted in astonished clamor as dragons descended bearing their impossible prey. Men recoiled at the cold swirling about bound shapes. Torches guttered when lifted too near. Stannis strode from tower with Davos trailing, disbelief flickering behind stern mask. Lightbringer at his hip glimmered faint crimson at Walker's presence. Shireen watched from behind battlement Krenel as Unsullied chained the prisoner inside a steel-barred cage perched atop a wagon bed. Every breath it exhaled frosted iron. The child trembled, but curiosity outweighed fear. She whispered to Claw beside her. "Monsters of snow," she said. "Yet they bleed blue light." Claw shuddered. "My mother told stories. Now story walks." Down in courtyard, Stannis approached Daenerys and Jon. "You bring winter's devil to my gates," he said, voice low yet crackling. "Was there no safer crypt?" "We bring you a scepter to break disbelief," Jon replied. "Ride with this thing through every camp between wall and trident. None will call us liars again." "More than sight may be needed," Daenerys added. "We show how to kill it. Dragonglass, Valyrian steel, fire, and dragons if we guard them well." Stannis studied prisoners' fettered struggle. "Very well. We depart when storms ease." He nodded to Davos. "Draft proclamations." Davos pursed lips. "Banners of Baratheon, Stark, and Targaryen together? Old lords will swallow tongues." "Let them choke if they must," Stannis growled. Within hours ravens burst skyward bearing missives sealed with triple sigils. Crowned stag quartered with wolf head and three-headed dragon. Each scroll told the same stark truth. The dead were no rumor. They marched in cold legions, and proof would arrive behind wings of midnight fire. Lords were commanded, begged, if pride required it, to gather at Winterfell within a month's turning. News spread more swiftly than birds. By the time first ravens reached White Harbor, rumors had already raced along trading caravans. A living corpse in chains, dragons roost atop the wall. A silver queen and a grim North King forging union in blood and frost. At Winterfell, Lady Sansa read Stannis' seal by hearthlight. She summoned Lord Glover, Lady Mormont, and Maester Wolkan before dawn. Words of argument rose. Talk of plows froze under specter of undead. When Second Raven confirmed with Night's Watch sigil, hesitation thawed into alarm. Sansa penned personal letters to the Vale and to Riverrun, her script urgent but steady. "Come see or come die. The dead care not for banners." Far south at Horn Hill, Samwell Tarly, now Maester in truth. Read the Morrow's Raven among Hightower scrolls. Sweat beaded though air was warm. He knew the cold from legends, yet now it marched. He turned to Gilly and their child. "We must ride," he whispered. "Every book I have ever read means nothing if we do not stand where the end begins." Old Town's Archmaester scoffed until Sam displayed the dragonglass shard Jon had given him, still humming with faint chill. That same night, Archmaester Marvin petitioned to send a conclave north, carrying tomes of Long Night lore and Copper Star maps. The Citadel had haggled over theory for centuries. At St. necessity trumped parchment. At Riverrun, Edmure Tully gathered Riverlords weary of war but stirred by tales of frost fiends. They recalled how Dragonfire once melted Harrenhal. Now they would serve flame again if it meant living to plant seeds come spring. In King's Landing, still half-ruined by wildfire scars, circles of merchants and sparrows debated raven whispers. Queen Mother Cersei, it was said, had fled west with Tommen and Myrcella, but remnants of the small council remained, led by Maester Qyburn and Ser Meryn Trant. They dismissed stories of undead as northern trickery to draw southern levies into frigid graves. Yet gold cloaks patrolled streets thinner each night, and common folk huddled to hear minstrels sing of the ice fiends. Fear grows faster than wheat. Highgarden's Tyrell host licked wounds under new Lord Garland. Unlike his late brother, Garland was cautious. But when a raven delivered a fragment of frost-burned walker bone, still chilling to touch, he nearly dropped it. He convened bannermen. They would ride north, not for crown but for gardens that bloom only for the living. Weeks turned. Eastwatch became crucible of unity. Ships arrived daily, cogs from White Harbor packed with oats, flat-bottomed barges from Sisterton bearing salted fish, even a battered Myrish galley repurposed for lumber. Each vessel carried not only cargo but news of banners stirring, forges blazing, lords calling levies. Blacksmiths labored at roaring hearths day and night shaping dragonglass arrowheads, hammered from obsidian mines on Dragonstone and Spicetown. Children and crones chipped shards into knives. Maesters mixed wildfire grenades sealed in clay, reminiscent of Blackwater's doom yet reborn for northern cause. Shireen organized scribes among wildling youths, teaching letters so ravens could fly farther still. Missandei oversaw a multilingual quartermaster ledger, tallying stock across tongues: Norvashi, Giskari, Old Tongue, Valemen dialect. Her neat hand wove order from chaos. Daenerys spent days high on Eastwatch's rookery, watching horizon with spyglass, feeding caged dragons lumps of beef thawed near braziers. Drogon's wound closed to silver pale scar. He flexed wing now without hiss, ready to soar south as herald of alliance. Rhaegal's leg healed slower but steadily. Viserion hunted seal and walrus, leaving mounds of blanching bones along shore. Men grumbled at stench, but none dared challenge Golden Cream Worm. In midnight hours, Daenerys and Jon walked frostlit ramparts. They spoke little, sharing silence heavy with knowledge of burdens ahead. One night Jon halted near a narrow embrasure, gaze fixed north. The aurora flared distant, thin curtains of pale green shimmering above ice plain. He spoke softly. "When I was boy in Winterfell, old Nen told me skies burn green when souls cross into after death. I thought it only tale. Now I see them every night and wonder how many pass the gate." Daenerys's breath steamed white. Perhaps it is not souls, but hope, lighting path for those still wandering. He looked at her, half-smile ghosting. Hope then burns brightest in darkest cold. They lingered until dawn glimmered, neither naming attachment growing between hearts tempered by ice and fire, yet each feeling its heat warding backside of fear. When first of the southern hosts arrived, snow still buried earth but dawns lengthened. Lady Lyanna Mormont marched at head of 200 islanders, each wearing bear pelt and steel half-helm. She saluted Daenerys with proud nod, then clasped Jon's arm. "If gods send monsters, we send claws," she declared. Next came Lord Glover's men, banners grudging yet present. Then an unexpected sight. A column of Vale knights in gleaming armor, escorted by the Knights of the Bloody Gate, with Peter Baelish riding at vanguard, green cloak immaculate. Sansa accompanied, seated straight-backed upon chestnut mare. At her side Bran Stark rode a sledge drawn by white pony, pale eyes distant. Arya followed on foot, silent as snowfall. Swordcat grace matured. When they entered Eastwatch Gate, Jon embraced each sibling with tears freezing on lashes. Daenerys watched quietly, touched by fierce Stark bond. Baelish bowed elegantly to her. "Your Grace," he purred. "The Vale arrives in service of survival. The Iron Throne grows, irrelevant in face of annihilation." His sly smile flicked toward captive Walker still chained inside triple iron cage. "But alliances endure beyond winters, do they not?" Her answering smile was frost-keen. "Alliances built on honest stone, Lord Baelish, stand longest. Mortar of secrets melts in spring." He inclined head, reading warning, and withdrew. Within a moon's turning, Eastwatch swelled like river in flood. Camps sprawled across coast. Smithies for Vale steel, fishhouse rows from White Harbor smoked day and night, tents of Reach surgeons dispensing lamprey oil poultice to frostbite victims. Giants roamed perimeter, gently stacking felled pines for palisade. A creche of orphan wildlings learned archery from Lady Mormont's sergeants, loosing shafts at straw-white dummies shaped with dragonglass ribs. But supplies strained. Grain dwindled. Salted meat turned rancid. Scurvy nipped. Ravens warned of late snowstorms choking King's Road. Sansa urged immediate march inland to Winterfell where stores were better. Stannis countered, "Fortify Eastwatch until every host arrived, then strike north in force." Davos mediated, but tension frayed. Inside Council Long Hall, torches guttered as voices rose. "We cannot huddle against sea waiting for death," Sansa argued. "Winterfell's granaries brim. Crypts hold dragonglass veins we've mined months. Move south, feed armies, train anew. Abandon the wall?" Stannis spat. "Let walkers breach bottleneck unchallenged?" Baelish stroked goatee. Perhaps divide forces. Rear echelons to Winterfell. Vanguard to guard Eastwatch. Half strength neither feeds nor fights, Davos said. Daenerys listened, weighing hearts against logistics. Dragons needed open sky and prey. Inland moors offered elk. People needed warmth. Winterfell's hot springs pumped heat through walls. She raised hand. Voices stilled. We split, but not half. She pointed to map. Jon leads 60% to Winterfell. Fortify, train, stock. Stannis remains with core garrison at Eastwatch. Hold gate. Continue forging dragonglass. I fly between with dragons, patrol, and ferry messages. In event of breach, dragons burn path of retreat south. Stannis's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Lightbringer stays north with me. Jon accepted. Winterfell readies hearth. Council agreed. Plans set. Ravens dispatched. Preparations consumed days. Sansa oversaw orderly departure. Vale Knights riding, wildling carts trailing children, giants tromping guard. Baelish volunteered to coordinate supply chain. Sansa assigned him under Davos's scrutiny. Daenerys watched caravans snaking west beneath polar dawn. Jon rode at head upon shaggy Garen, ghost wolf Direwhite at flank. He turned once, met her gaze across Snow Valley. She raised gloved hand. He returned gesture, then spurred onward. Weeks passed in dual rhythms. Winterfell's courtyards thundered with hammer and shout. Eastwatch's towers glowed each night with dragonfire beacons. Daenerys flew constant between, Drogon healed and mighty once more, regal with Yora honing aerial escort maneuvers, Viserion delighting in plunging from cloudbanks to fish rivers. She grew to know northern airways. Emerald shimmer of sky at midnight, aroma of pine wafting from Wolfswood, hush of moonlit fields where white hares bolted at dragon shadow. She felt kinship with land ancient as Valyria yet never claimed. North accepted her not with cheers but pragmatic nod. A new weapon for old enemy. One dusk above last hearth, she spotted black columns swirling over horizon, lances of shadow twisting. She angled Drogon for closer view and felt blood chill. A blizzard of frost ravens circled Burnt Keep, carcasses strewn below. In courtyard lay bodies of umbers, faces frozen in horror, eyes glazed ice blue. She counted hundreds. The walkers had struck south of wall. She banked hard, heart hammering, urged Drogon to full speed east. Eastwatch received her in frantic alarm. Stannis listened grimly, then ordered bells rung. Davos dispatched riders to Winterfell. They had thought the wall safe with magic and dragons. Yet walkers found passes through ice rivers north of Queen's Crown, circumventing Main Gate. Scouts returned days later, reanimated Umber dead marching south, 2 white giants with them. Spear points of frost across map. Jon convened emergency council at Winterfell's Great Hall. Fires roared in hearths but dread chilled marrow. Bran, eyes milky, spoke then with voice echoing otherworld. The Night King breaks chains of old spells. He seeks 3 songs, of ice, of fire, of truth. When he holds them, dawn will fail. Silence followed. Arya's hand fell to dagger hilt. Sansa's lips pressed thin. Daenerys placed fist on table. Then we deny him songs. We forge discord, make his strides stumble. Jon agreed. We meet him where he thinks we are weakest, open fields of Last River. Dragons collapse his flanks. Infantry forms crescent, giants anchor ends. Stannis arrived next dawn with 3,000 Eastwatch men, Lightbringer gleaming fierce. Shireen rode in wagon wrapped in quilts, insisting to knit banners bearing intertwined sigils. When host marshaled, 30,000 strong marched north to intercept approaching storm of death. Battle of Last River consumed 3 nights. First night, drowning sleet turned ground to muck. Whites churned it into sucking morass. Unsullied shield wall held while dragons strafed edges, but frost mists coiled upward each time flame met snow, dousing heat. Second night, white thunder cracked sky. Walkers conjured hail spears that punched through armor. Vale Knights countercharged with lances tipped dragonglass. Hundreds perished but broke dead cavalry. At dawn of third day, Night King appeared riding skeletal wyvern of ice, descendant of storms long vanished. He wielded trident of black rime. Dragons met him mid-air. Sky became whirl of fire and frost. Drogon's flame clashed trident beams, shattering into molten rain. Regal bit wyvern's neck. Ice splintered. Shards sliced wing membranes. Both creatures plummeted. Daenerys tumbled from saddle, Drogon twisting to shield her impact. She landed bruised but alive, encircled by wights. Jon saw and charged, hacking path. Tormund followed, giant 1-1 behind hurling boulders. Lightbringer shone incandescent, Stannis beside them. Night King dismounted wreck, strode across battlefield. Blue glare fixed on Daenerys crawling from beneath Drogon's wing. He raised trident. Time slowed. Snow suspended mid-whirl, heartbeats boomed thunderous. Then Bran's voice echoed through wind, not from lips, for he sat miles away, but through ravens swirling overhead. Now, Arya sprang from shadows behind Night King, blade of Valyrian steel in hand. She leapt, strike aimed true. Night King wheeled, trident parried, blade glanced, sparks flying. Yet spark flared into flame, Lightbringer streaking downward as Stannis hammered blow into trident's shaft. Frost weapon split, shards erupted. Jon drove Longclaw into Night King's back simultaneously. Valyrian steel met heart of crystal. An explosion of blinding light consumed all vision. When eyes cleared, only drifting snow remained where Tyrant of Winter had stood. Wights collapsed universally, strings cut. Silence expanded, immense and aching. Dawn broke through tattered cloud. First true sunlight month strong spilled golden across field, painting drifts in rose hues. Men wept, giants knelt, heads bowed. Dragons roared, a sound of unbound storm yet jubilant. Daenerys rose on bruised limbs, meeting Jon's stunned gaze. His sword dripped blue liquid that evaporated to steam. Stannis stood panting, Lightbringer's fire guttering but still bright. No words sufficed. Instead they gathered hands atop fractured snow. Ice-speckled, blood-slick, yet warm. Around them, armies cheered or simply collapsed in relief. Aftermath stretched long. Pyres burned for 7 nights. Northrend wind carried ash far as Bear Island. Dragonglass mines thrummed forging tools to rebuild rather than war. Sansa opened Winterfell's gates to the wounded. Wildlings settled abandoned holdfasts under Northern Lord protection. Giants aided masons raising new watchtowers along shattered rivers. At King's Landing, rumors of victory arrived like spring swallows. Common folk lit candles to strange Dragon Queen and Snow King. Qyburn's faction faltered. Circuitry of power rewired. Garland Tyrell negotiated trade of Reach grain north in exchange for sworn oaths of friendship. Yet crowns remained unsorted. Inside Winterfell's great hall, a council of realms convened. Lords of River and Vale, Reach and Dorne elected spokesmen. All eyes turned to dais where Daenerys and Jon sat adjacent, Stannis standing sentinel behind. Lord Royce spoke first. 7 kingdoms sundered by decade of war. But ice and fire united saved Dawn. We must forge rule anew. Lady Mormont rose on bench. North will follow king who bled in our snows. Lord Glover countered. And dragons burn Lannister gold, ending debt. Tensions brewed. Baelish smiled thinly. Sansa raised hand. The realm needs choice honored by all. She turned to Bran. Brother, what do Green Sight and Memory counsel? Bran's eyes filmed white, then cleared. War began with broken promises. Peace begins when promises kept. Jon's blood of ice and fire both, born of Rhaegar and Lyanna. Gasps rippled. Jon froze. Daenerys blinked. Bran continued. But blood alone no longer binds thrones. Deadsdu. Jon gave crown to shield humanity. Daenerys gave dragons. Together they forged Dawn. Let realm crown both or neither, and build council of lords to balance flame. A hush fell. Then Tormund barked laugh. Make 2-head wolf dragon chair. Let them share. Murmurs grew supportive. Baelish's smile faltered. Stannis looked to Lightbringer. Flame gone, sword now plain steel. He bowed head. Law bends to survival. Daenerys reached for Jon's hand. He clasped gently. She addressed Hall. I dreamed of Iron Throne melted to puddle. I see better throne now. Forged of honor and sacrifice, seat not of sharp steel but sturdy oak, wide enough for many voices. She turned to Jon. Will you share that burden? He met her eyes, mountains of destiny rumbling behind those pale grays. I will, if realm wills. Lords rose one by one, swords lifted in oath. Sansa added her voice. Royce bowed, even Glover. Last was Stannis. He knelt, offering Lightbringer. Its edge caught rising sun and flared once more warm glow, not searing. He placed it at their feet. A sword of justice, he said. May it guide, not rule. Children's laughter drifted from corridor where Shireen escorted Claw and other wildling babes to dining hearth. Dragons outside spread wings in lazy circles above ramparts. Warm southern breezes gliding beneath. Aurora did not appear that night. Sky instead blanketed by soft violet of ordinary dusk. Stars winked gentle. The war was over. New wars would come. Taxes, rivalries, restless ambitions. But none would bear breath of final night. In quiet bedchamber, Daenerys stood at Arrow Loop, gazing over snowy forests glowing rose under moon. Jon approached behind, arms encircling waist. Together they watched Drogon curl upon Tower's peak, tail flicking contentedly. A song of ice and fire, she murmured. Jon kissed her hair. A song still being written. Let us write it slow, she said, leaning back. Beyond, bells rang celebration. Wolves howled northward, dragons answered south. Dawn would come sooner now, earlier each morn, until winter at last relented and tender buds pressed through thawing soil. And when children yet unborn asked how longest night was ended, grandmothers would speak of a silver queen astride black flame, of a wolf king wielding star-metal blade, of armies united, of friendship forged in icewind and kept in dragon fire. They would speak of love that melted crowns, and of the day hope walked unfettered across white plains, carrying morning in its hands. Moonlight draped Winterfell's ramparts in milk-white sheen, and the winds, gentler now, carried hints of distant thaw. The damp musk of earth reawakening beneath snow, the sweet smoke of tallow lamps guttering in towns newly repopulate. In the God's Wood, branches glittered with 1,000 ice crystals, each reflecting the red eye of the heart tree, tireless witness to all that had passed. Daenerys walked the path of packed snow alone save for faint music of rustling leaves. The old gods were not hers, yet here she felt less foreign. No marble idols, no burning incense, only rooted silence and memory. She laid a bare palm upon the weirwood's rough bark. The tree felt warm despite frost, as though it hoarded blood heat from every vow sworn beneath. Behind her, soft footfalls. Jon emerged, ghost-white wolf at heel, cloak of black and gray fur sweeping the ground. He paused on edge of clearing, hesitant to intrude, but she beckoned. They stood together in hush broken only by gusts through pines. We ride south at dawn, he said at length, voice low. The first column leaves for King's Landing. Vale Knights depart with us. Dorne's outriders meet near the Blackwater. Daenerys nodded. The streets must see dragons and direwolves side by side, else rumor will outrun ravens. How fares the road? Passable. Tormund's men cleared drifts as far as Moat Cailin. But melted snow means bog. Wagons sink. I'll take Regal ahead to scout for firm ground. Burn deadfalls if needed. She flexed gloved fingers. Drogon rests on the rookery roof. His scar itches whenever wind shifts warm. Jon smiled faintly. A scar is only skin reminding itself it lived. They shared silence, breath mingling in pale vapor. Beyond the Godswood wall, horns sounded once. Midnight watch changing. Distant hammer clang echoed from forges near the winter town where dragonglass arrowheads piled like onyx teeth. Every sound told story of a kingdom waking from nightmare and finding that dawn required toil, not dreams. Jon cleared his throat. Maester Wolkan drew marriage contracts for review. He looked away toward Hearttree. We can delay until realm steadies. Daenerys studied his profile, the scar above brow, the worry lines deepened since last river. Delay tells lords we lack conviction. Let the marriage be the stone under New Keep's first archstone must set before walls rise. He nodded, exhaling. Then at Harrenhal, as agreed. The ruin lay halfway to capital, neutral ground for both North and Crownlands. Still scarred from Dragonfire centuries old. Arya says its bones need cleansing. A wedding feast should do. Daenerys laughed softly, startled by warmth of sound in haunted grove. A feast of ghosts, she said. Very well. Before dawn grayed horizon, Winterfell's gates yawned open and an army rolled forth. Spear-hedged columns of Northmen in wolf-head helms. Ranks of Vale lancers beneath sky-blue banners. Wildling hunters in leathers, owl-feather fletchings bristling at their backs. Giants lumbered at flanks pulling sledges piled with barrels. Gift of Tully fisheries. At vanguard rode Jon astride a shaggy destrier, cloak snapping, ghost pacing silent. To his right, Daenerys soared upon Drogon, shadow cascading across frozen fields. Regal circled overhead, Yora clutching flight strap. Viserion followed, golden sails outstretched to dawn. Sansa watched from battlements, cheeks red. Denning in wind, Bran beside her in wheeled chair carved from weirwood fallen during storm. Snowflakes melted on Bran's lashes, yet he never blinked. When horns sounded farewell, he turned to sister. Threads weave true, he whispered, voice echoing cavernous distances. Yet vigilance remains our fire. Sansa squeezed his hand. Then we will keep fires lit. Behind them, Lyanna Mormont barked orders to remaining garrison, her fierce voice carrying, "Archers to south wall. If the Boltons rose from graves, we'd pin them twice." Garrison laughed. Fear had no footing beneath that girl's roar. The march south unfolded like slow, unfurling tapestry. At Moat Cailin, the host found causeway mud-thick but passable. Giants laid fallen pines to bridge sinkholes. Small folk peered from turf huts, astonished at dragons wheeling overhead. Some knelt, others waved wooden charms. One grizzled elder spat, muttering, "Black wings, red dawn." Yet he bowed when Jon dismounted to offer smoked eel for a cauldron fire. At Queen's Crown, where walkers had skirted wall, the party halted. Half-collapsed watchtower still smoked from recent pyre of whites left to burn. Daenerys dismounted to walk charred ground. Snow drifts hissed where embers glowed beneath crust, and scent of burned bone lingered. She knelt, scooped handful of ash, let it fall through fingers. A voice behind Davos. He carried ledger, quill stuck behind ear. "Never thought I'd ride this far from sea to tally sacks of oats," he said gently. "Never thought I'd see a queen gather ash like prayer. Their stories fell with them," she murmured. "But perhaps some memory seeps into snow, feeds new life." He sniffed. "Aye, snow nourishes come spring. Speaking o' which, reach wagons wait at Castle Serwyn, grain, seed, a cask of arbor gold." He rubbed beard. "Lads could use a swig." "Let them," she said. "Tomorrow we push to the neck." On the 12th day they camped among barrow mounds where first men slept beneath oaken cairns. Night air warming off flooded fens shimmered with marshlights, green flames dancing low above dark pools. The old spear maidens of the Crannog came barefoot across water as if on glass. Their leader, Lady Mira of Greywater, offered baskets of cured frog and bog oak resin. She eyed dragons warily but bowed. "Father says tide marks shift," she told Jon. "The dead stirred the peat, but we drove them back. If tide of ice returns, blow this horn." She presented spiral conch wrapped in copper vines. "Its call rides fog." Jon accepted. "Pray we blow it for joy, not warning." Mira smiled, gesturing to Daenerys. Mother spoke in dreams of pale queen riding storm. "Welcome to the neck." That night, around shared hearths on platforms raised above reeds, Northmen traded stories with Crannog spearwives. Unsullied sat awkwardly cross-legged, tasting frog for first time. Some smiled behind terse discipline. Dragonglass arrowheads changed hands for bottles of sweetgrass wine. The world stitched itself. Approaching the Trident Plains, Green shoots poked snow crust, faint teasers of spring. Fields lay fallow but ready. Atop a hillock where Robert Baratheon had won his crown decades prior, Host paused. Wind carried scent of thawed earth, the sort that clings under fingernails. Stannis rode up slope alone, dismounted before rough stone cairn marking his brother's death site. He knelt, removed mailed glove, placed it upon weather-worn rock. "I kept the realm," he whispered. "Not as you wanted, brother, but as it needed." He rose, turned, found Daenerys watching from Drogon's back. He inclined head, not quite bow, yet gesture soft as spring bud. She returned nod. Old wounds between dragon and stag eased under new light. Down the slope, banners of riverlords joined. Edmure Tully with Mal Lister and Blackwood vassals. They brought river barges afloat with pikes, nets, even live carp to seed ponds ravaged by ice. Children chased each other through lines of campfires, squealing when Viserion's shadow passed overhead like swift cloud. When at last Harrenhal's broken towers appeared on horizon, jagged silhouettes against pink dusk, the host spread across God's Eye's northern shore. Ruined keeps still bore scorch marks of Aegon's wrath, courtyards choked with weeds. Yet hot springs steamed through cracked flagstones, painting air with ghostly veils. It would serve. Stonemasons from Riverrun had ridden ahead. They now raised stout timbers for makeshift feast hall amid central yard, draping walls with cloth of gold and dire wolf gray. Giant candles cast warmth into crevices centuries cold. In airy chapel once melted by black dread, benches lined with fresh rushes awaited vows. On eve of wedding, snowfall returned soft as down. Jon stood at parapet overlooking God's Eye, Steve of Mal Lister playing low harp by brazier. Below, unsullied torches traced patrol arcs. He felt presence behind. Arya stepped from shadow, face half-masked by wolf pelt hood. "Little brother became king," she said. He smiled. "Not my wish, nor mine." She leaned on parapet with him. "But you still fight like a bastard. That pleases me." She produced small vial. "Gift, Dornish blossom oil. For swordswoman's wedding night." Mischief lit her eyes. He laughed. "Wrong groom. Right bride then." She pocketed vial. "Be happy, Jon. Kings break when hearts starve." He clasped her hand. "Stay, serve as queen's blade." "I roam," she said, gazing south. "But call and I return." A wolf knows pack song. She melted into night. Wedding dawned beneath clear sky blazing pale blue. Ruined Sep's roof long gone, so sunlight poured upon crowd. Lords in furs, wildlings in bone necklaces, dragons perched on broken buttresses. Heart tree sapling transplanted from God's wood of Winterfell stood in earthen pot between charred columns. Flame braziers flanked it, north and south, ice and fire. Sansa led Daenerys down Isle of Rushes, silver hair crowned with weave of red winter roses and pale Myrish glass beads carved like dragon scales. Gown of quilted white satin trimmed in stark gray-hugged shoulders, open in back to allow Dragon Queen's posture free. She carried no bouquet, only embroidered sash bearing three-headed wolf dragon sigil stitched by Shireen's careful hands. Music rose. Low horns of Vale, pipes of the north, Meereen drums. Jon awaited wearing doeskin jerkin dyed charcoal. Direwolf clasped pin of dragonglass at throat. Ghost sat behind tail-sweeping stones. Bran presided, voice resonant though quiet, reciting union vow older than undull faith. Ice joined fire, winter wed summer, sword shield hearth. When he finished, Jon and Daenerys exchanged ceremonial blades. Valyrian dagger Heartsbane from Horn Hill for him, dragonglass stiletto for her, crossing them above clasped hands. Bran bound hilts with strip of weirwood bark. As they kissed, regal loosed column of green flames skyward, Viserion gold, Drogon red. The braids interwove, forming fiery plume towering above shattered spires. Crowd erupted cheers. Some bowed, others wept, some laughed in disbelief that ruin bred celebration. Feast followed in great yard cleared of rubble. Long trestles groaned under roast aurochs, honeyed figs, wheels of salty cheese, and 3 enormous river pikes smoked whole. Giants toasted with barrels hoisted to lips. Dornishmen taught wildlings to dance. Grey Worm, stiff at first, allowed Crannig children to paint his shield with lily pads and spear frogs. He laughed, a sound like cracking ice under first thaw. Stannis sat beside Edmure, sipping watered wine, jaw relaxing as laughter washed over Hall. Even Davos danced a reel with Lady Lyanna until his knees complained. Daenerys wandered among revelers, heady with joy alien yet welcome. She paused beside Shireen, who displayed sketchbook of sigils newly penned. "I made one for you," the girl said shyly, revealing drawing. Crowned dragon wolf circling open book crowned by 7-point star. "For new library you promised King's Landing." Daenerys knelt, kissing girl's scarred cheek. "It will hang above first shelf." Beyond, Baelish leaned in shadowed arch, eyes calculating. He sipped arbor gold, measuring alliances. Sansa appeared at his side, smile polite yet eyes cold. "Enjoying evening?" she asked. "Immensely," he murmured. "Weddings breed opportunity." "And widows?" she returned, then stepped away, leaving him to ponder. Next morn, royal procession continued south, smaller retinue but grander purpose. Announce union, rally houses still wavering. Dragons wheeled overhead. Captive walker wagon trundled behind, iron mask now sealed with lead to prevent accidental frost. In every market they passed, Daenerys unveiled prisoner, frost aura wilting cabbages and freezing troughs. Jon demonstrated dragonglass dagger piercing white flesh, white thrash quelled, then regal torched mask, flame consumed corpse in blinding burst. Fear and faith coursed crowd faces, then cheers. Wagon burned afterwards. Ashes scattered in river to hush nightmares. Outside stony September, they met Garland Tyrell leading 2,000 reachers, banners fluttering with golden roses entwined leaves of Garth. Garland knelt, presenting ledger of grain shipments and treaty parchment. "The reach bends knee to wolf dragon throne," he proclaimed. "May gardens bloom beneath northern snow." Inside King's Landing, charred city had grown semblance of order. Broken streets cleared, sept timbers replaced. Small folk seeded gardens in blackened lots fertilized by ash. When dragons appeared, panic rippled but soon stilled as unsullied lined boulevards distributing loaves and salted beans. Daenerys landed before Red Keep's shattered gate, Jon beside on direwolf bannered destrier. Bells rang, not for surrender but return of rule. Goldcloaks kneeled. Qyburn attempted escape but was seized by Arya disguised as stable boy. Rumor claims he begged Shadow herself for mercy. In throne room stripped of melted iron seat, council assembled. Sansa named Hand of Realm. Davos, Master of Ships. Grey Worm, Lord Commander of Queen's Guard. Samwell Tarly stepped forward as Grand Maester, chain of metals tinkling. He laid scrolls enumerating city sewers, orphan hospice, granary grants. Jon shook his hand. "Well done, Sam." Tyrion Lannister, freed from dungeon at Daenerys' command, entered contrite. "I often advise thrones," he quipped. "Rarely ones that listen." He proposed plan. Convert wildfire caches into glassworks for rebuilding windows. Tax remitted to fund wall repairs. Daenerys raised brow. "You will oversee." He bowed deeply. Across realm, seasons lurched toward spring. Snowline retreated from neck. Buds unfurled on white weirwood saplings planted in every town square. Fisherfolk returned to sea lanes now free of icebergs. Merchants of Myr sailed Blackwater, leaving bolts of silk woven with dragons circling wolves. At world's edge, watchers observed far north aurora fade to gentle glow, old magic yawning after long vigil. In rough shack carved from glacier, 2 remaining walkers huddled about scrap of blue flame, their king gone, purpose shattered. Wind whispered across broken plains, carrying faint heat from south. Maybe they dreamed of rest. On first day of true spring, Daenerys stood upon Red Keep balcony, dawn washing city gold. Below, ghost of Iron Throne melted long ago had been recast into low dais wide enough for 2 carved oak chairs, cushions embroidered with direwolf spiraling 3-headed dragon. Children played tag around dais, their laughter echoing off marble. Jon joined, placing warm mug of spiced milk in her hands. Breeze tousled his hair. Sun touched Scar. "Small folk call us Morning King and Dawn Queen," he said. She smiled. "Better than usurper and dragon." He looked out over rooftops where new banners fluttered, gray and red entwined. "Rebuilding may last longer than war. Then we have lifetime," she said, leaning into him. Overhead, Drogon passed, shadow briefly dimming sun before light returned brighter still. Below, Shireen opened library doors for first time. Children filed in clutching slates. Sam welcomed them, gesturing to shelves lined with histories, accounts, treatises on dragonglass forging, medical scrolls. Knowledge salvaged from ashes to seed tomorrow. From Breakwater, Arya's ship unfurled black sail emblazoned with lone wolf. She waved once, then vanished into haze, seeking western sunset. Tormund led giants north again, singing of green valleys to tend. Brienne accepted mantle of Lady Commander of Queensguard, golden armor reflecting sunrise. Across narrow sea, emissaries of free cities arrived offering trade. Meereen envoys bowed, gift of polished harpy claws as token of freedmen's solidarity. Daenerys welcomed them. Slavers answered fire. Free men answer voice. Sit, speak. That night, lanterns floated upon Blackwater like fallen stars. Atop highest tower, Daenerys and Jon released single paper lamp, its candle lifting it skyward. On its thin hull Shireen had painted sigil of book within Dragonwolf circle. They watched until it vanished among host of others, filling dark with soft, drifting constellations. Jon turned to her. "We fought night with sword and flame," he said. "How do we fight long peace?" "Page by page," she answered, taking his hand. "And if pages burn, we write anew." Bells tolled midnight. City beyond walls shimmered under lantern rain. Dragons perched upon watchtowers, closed eyes, trusting silent streets. North stars glimmered, not in menace but promise. The long night had ended. Song of Ice and Fire moved into quiet verse, its tune now carried by hearts unarmored, beating steady beneath same sky that once watched swords clash and now watched seedlings push through scorched earth. And somewhere in deep vaults of memory, old gods and new exhaled, content to let morning rule. Soft morning light filtered through the lattice of new glass panes set into the refurbished windows of Maegor's Holdfast, falling in angled beams across a floor that had, mere months ago, been blackened and cracked by wildfire. The scent of fresh mortar and cured oak permeated the corridors, mingling with the faint perfume of lemon oil rubbed into the long banquet tables awaiting their midday inspection. Outside, King's Landing murmured with an almost unfamiliar rhythm. Carts creaked under loads of rubble taken from streets now wide enough for 2 wagons abreast. Smithies rang with hammers forging plowshares as often as spearheads, and on the distant shores of the Blackwater docks, children shrieked with giddy surprise whenever Viserion's pale shadow swept overhead like a passing summer cloud. Daenerys rose before dawn, as she had every day since their arrival, and slipped from beneath the linen covers she shared with Jon. She left him curled on his side, breathing slow, ghost sprawled across his legs like some marble sentinel. The hush of their chamber, once echoing with the ghosts of mad kings and the clatter of Robert's drunken armor, felt almost domestic in its warmth. A brazier glowed softly at one corner, fed by a single coal she had coaxed into flame hours earlier when restless thoughts had driven her from sleep. She clothed herself in riding leathers, not the silks the ladies of court pressed upon her, buckled the short dragonglass dagger to her thigh, and paused at the balcony doors to breathe the chill, salt-sweet air drifting from the bay. Drogon roosted on the highest tower of the Red Keep. She sensed him more than saw him, a presence in her blood, the hot ember that trembled beneath her sternum whenever he stirred. Rhaegal and Viserion had chosen perches farther out, one atop the cracked dome of the Great September still under repair, the other near the charred bell tower of the Guildhall of Alchemists. Their watchful trinity kept the city safe in ways no garrison ever could. More than once a thief or would-be rioter had fled shrieking at the hiss of leathern wings overhead. Yet Daenerys knew terror alone could not sustain peace. She descended through the keep's spiral stairs, stones still pitted where wildfire had scorched them, and emerged into the renovated war council chamber. A long trestle table dominated the room, its surface a fresh map of the realm painted on sanded oak, rivers and hills etched in lapis and malachite. Dragonglass pins marked granary reserves, garrison dispositions, and trade routes reopened. Samwell Tarly stood at its head, half a dozen ledgers propped open before him, finger-trailing rows of figures. He looked up as she entered, cheeks flushing. "Your Grace," he said, bobbing an abbreviated bow, while smudging his lip. "The latest tallies from the grain wagons out of Bitterbridge. We've surpassed our spring target by near 2,000 bushels. At this rate, we may fortify reserves for full winter even if the north winds return." Daenerys traced the river leading from the Mander to the narrow sea. "And the root stores in Flea Bottom? Filling faster than expected." Lady Marjorie's Beesbury vassals sent an entire fleet of honey and pickled turnips. "Not all at once, mind," he added, fumbling for a cloth to wipe his ink-splattered chin. "But a steady stream." Outside the chamber, footsteps and jocular northern voices signaled the arrival of Tormund Giantsbane and Yora. Tormund swept in with a swagger that made the keep's polished banners flutter. His foxfur cloak damp from the sea spray he liked to taste each morning, as if suspicion lingered that southern air might sour overnight. Yora followed, quiet but alert, behind them a pair of Crannogmen guards in mottled cloaks. Wherever Daenerys looked these days, the realm's fractures were stitched by such unlikely seams. Wildling and Knight, Maester and Crannog's spearwife, Reachman and Stormlander, working side by side. "Morning, Queen," Tormund boomed, thumping his fist over the wolf and dragon sigil newly sewn to his rough spun. "Jon still Abed? Must be those deep mattresses you Crownlanders pamper him with. Or perhaps queenly company." He grinned, showing a gap where a fist had knocked loose a tooth at last river. Daenerys spared a smile. "He's earned his rest for once, but I will see him soon enough." Her fingers brushed the map near a silver pin marking Old Town. "Today we judge plans for the Citadel's envoy." Sam cleared his throat. "Archmaester Marwyn arrives within the week, accompanied by every scroll on White Walker lore that still exists. They, wish an audience in the new Hall of Governance, which is not yet tiled," Yora observed, folding arms. "The workmen uncovered more fissured vaults yesterday, rooms Ares intended for wildfire. They'll need days to shore the arches. Then we host the maesters in the throne court courtyard," Daenerys said. "Let them see the empty space where iron blades once towered, a symbol of knowledge replacing terror." Tormund scratched his beard. "If they speak half as riddling as Bran, we'll need barrels of mulled wine." Sam's eyes twinkled. "Maesters can be verbose." The door creaked anew, and Davos Seaworth strode in, parchment rolled tight in his good hand, the other gloved to his wrist stub against lingering chill. Behind him trailed two Bravosi merchants in embroidered sashes, their manner deferential but eager. "Storm's End Harbor now repairs its fourth pier," Davos reported, unrolling the parchment onto the map. "The Iron Bank funded half on promise of stable tariffs. The merchants gild the rest. Bravos expects first flax convoy within a fortnight." One of the Bravosi bowed, thin mustache twitching. "Peace is good for business, magnificent queen. We bring Lorgy silks next and maybe," he tapped the parchment shyly, "support for your library galleys." Daenerys inclined her head. When she spoke, it was to Sam. "Draft a charter of safe passage for every merchant skyship under treaty, including immunities in plague ports, and ensure our library's copyists accompany the convoys. They will collect texts wherever they dock." Sam scribbled fervently, ink droplets flecking his sleeve. Yora smiled. "A conquering queen who plunders books. Scholars of Valyria would be proud." She regarded them all, hand resting on the lapis forest of the Kingswood. "Knowledge is flame that cannot burn unbidden. We gather it not for hoarding, but for sharing, lest ice return when memory fails." Her gaze shifted to Davos. "Any word from Stannis at Eastwatch?" "A raven at dawn," Davos said, voice sober. "The old king keeps vigil. Reports no movement beyond the shattered passes. Yet his men spotted storms over shivering sea thicker than season merits. He worries frozen gales may break loose drift ice and blockade the Bay of Seals. Tormund scoffed gently. Stannis would drill holes in winter's teeth if he could. Daenerys nodded. Send him our latest stores manifest and the Citadel's new dragonglass forging treatise. And remind him he is always welcome south. Yora's brow creased. He will not come willingly while men still call Jon king. Then let him stay where his honor roots deep, she replied, a softness in her tone. The realm is broad enough for toil of many stewards. A quiet settled, broken only by quill-scratching parchment. Outside the windows, bells pealed from the Street of Sisters, calling apprentices to guild lessons newly reinstated under the Crown's decree. The capital's midday bustle greeted Daenerys as she rode down the King's Road toward the site of the new library complex. Children ran alongside her palfrey, squealing with delight when Drogon's shadow swept the rooftops. Vendors hawked honeycakes shaped like dragons and tiny wooden direwolves painted gray and white. A group of septas tended an herb garden once scarred by spilled wildfire. Lavender and coltsfoot thrived where nothing but ash had grown. She dismounted before a half-finished stone facade where Travis the stonemason bowed low, dust swirling about his boots. "Capstones arrive tomorrow, your grace," he said, wiping mortar from his brow. "We'll raise the central arch by moonrise. The reading hall should shelter its first scrolls within the fortnight." Daenerys ran her hand over the carved lintel, two intertwined branches, leaves carved in alternating shapes, dragon wings and wolf fletchings. "And the People's Assembly Forum? In progress behind the scriptorium. Amphitheater style as requested, open to sky." "Good," she said. "Justice must be spoken where the wind may carry it beyond walls." As she toured scaffolding, a sudden roar tore across the sky. She turned to see Regal swoop low, Yora clinging sturdily. The green dragon banked toward the river, then rose on a thermal, mighty pinions scattering ravens from a rooftop. Daenerys's heartbeat quickened at the grace of it, at the knowledge none in the world could match such freedom. Yet she reminded herself freedom meant little if not tempered by purpose. That evening she and Jon dined not at the head table but in the kitchens, sampling stewed rabbit beside bakers and potboys. They spoke of mundane miracles, how Ghost had fathered a litter of pups in the kennels, how Gilly's reading circles for small folk were drawing throngs too large for the fish market square, how new sewers redirected waste to gardens' outside walls, fertilizing winter wheat. After supper they walked the ramparts. Jon pointed to flickering lights in the distant harbor, ships arriving under moon, sails pale as moth wings. "Brotherhood without banners escorting 3 vessels from Pentos," he said. "Red priests aboard, bearing scrolls from Ass High, and a choir of orphans. They wish to sing for peace." She slid her arm through his. "Then peace will echo." For days later the Citadel envoy reached King's Landing, a procession of palanquins draped in pale cream, each borne by silent novices. At its head strode Archmaester Marwyn, thick of neck, rings glinting, eyes bright with curiosity. Beside him limped a thin, severe man with copper spectacles, Tybald, master of vaults. They bowed to Daenerys in the courtyard as Regal's green wings filled the westward sky. "Magnificent Queen," Marwyn intoned, "we bring an archive of truths long lost, sealed ciphers of the long night, treatises on dragonglass alchemy, atlases of Valyrian stars." Tybald extended a box of ebony polished to a mirror shine. Within, a map of Lees hidden beneath the wall, carved on starlight vellum. "Some claim it is myth. Many myths bled into flesh this past year," Daenerys said, guiding them toward the courtyard dais where Sam and Sansa awaited. "Show me what else myth concealed." They unveiled crystal phials of pale blue liquid, distilled tears of iceheart lilies, said to repel white rot. They unrolled rust-flaked diagrams of binding sigils etched by children of the forest. They presented steel chips hammered from the last known sword of red steel, kin to Valyrian but forged in some bygone winter empire. Sam handled each with reverence. "This knowledge," he breathed, "could empower every hamlet along the wall." Daenerys gestured toward the open amphitheater beyond the library's half-built arch. Tomorrow at sunrise, the Scholars' Assembly meets. Bring your discoveries. We share them not in secret rooms, but before the eyes of craftsmen and crofters alike. Marwyn's heavy brows lifted, impressed. A queen who trusts common minds. Sansa answered, smooth as iced wine. The mind, Archmaester, needs no title to kindle. That night Jon convened a blunt war council, though war, for the first time, was distant thunder rather than immediate thunderclap. Edmure Tully, Garland Tyrell, Jon Royce, for Lyseni envoys, and aging Dothraki Call, whose riders now patrolled Dornish marches. They sat around a round table of rough ash. At its center lay no siege maps but a ledger of labor quotas, and parchment listing orphan apprentices placed in new guilds. We have secured the realm's belly, Jon said, tapping numbers. Next we tend its bones. Roads healed will bind ports to heartlands. The river road, the high hill pass, the Dornish causeway. Repair them before next winter and caravans will flow. Royce nodded, beard twitching. My masons can spare 500 by month's end. Garland added, Highgarden's carpenters double that, with carts of timber if the crown grants tax remission. Tybald opened his ledger. Remission considered if efficiencies follow. Daenerys watched the interplay, wheeling of promises, chafferings of coin, yet free of the venom that once poisoned the small council. She saw the shape of a new realm forming. Messy, slow, but live with possibility. In Bravos, Titan horns bellowed as news of the morning throne reached the Sea Lord's palace. Spymaster whispers spoke of unified Westerosi tariffs, of dragonglass shipments set to undercut Myrish Bachwin trade. The Sea Lord consulted his purple-robed courtiers, eyeing war coffers, but his daughter, Irina, famous for her swordcraft, counseled patience. A realm led by ice and fire may cool or burn itself, she said. Better we watch which heat endures. On Iron Islands, Queen Yara Greyjoy paced the deck of the Black Wind, scanning the horizon for her envoy's return. She had sworn fealty to Wolfdragon throne in exchange for autonomy over Saltways. Yet her lords muttered that iron men bent to no one. When a raven brought news of northern dockyards granting safe harbor, she smiled bleakly. Give them harbors, we dock. Give them tribute, we sail. The Ironborn were changing, slow, grudging, but the world had turned enough that even salt-soaked banners caught new winds. Essos too rippled. The Council of Wise Masters in Meereen declared annual festival of fire and dawn, honoring the queen who had freed them and now forged west and east in knowledge. Ships bearing scribes and weavers crossed Summer Sea, exchanging obsidian tips for silk bolts painted with intertwined sigils. Slaver remnants grumbled in distant Selhurries, but new Terrasher fleet kept sea lanes honest. Back in King's Landing, on the first anniversary of Last River, Daenerys presided over a multitude assembled in the renovated dragon pit, no longer an arena of chained beasts, but a gathering hall where dragons perched docile among arches festooned with vines. She and Jon stood together before a shrine of carved obsidian shaped like a stylus and sword forming a star. Attendants carried baskets of parchment and charcoal stubs to the tiers, inviting every child to write a wish for realm's future. Shireen read aloud the first. A boy who longed for lights in streets after dusk so no child need fear dark. The second, a girl wanting a library in every village. The third, a smith's son who dreamed of forging swords only for ceremony. Cheers and laughter followed each declaration. Daenerys raised her voice. We fought winter with steel and fire, yet winter nests where ignorance breeds. Today we forge a new blade, understanding. Let every wish become contract. We shall labor until they stand true. Jon stepped forward, face both humbled and proud. And should darkness gather once more, remember, neither sword nor page alone will fend it, only hearts united. They clasped hands, lifting arms. Dragons roared overhead, 3 voices braided. Paper wishes fluttered as wind stirred by great wings filled the pit, spiraling upward like birds freed. When sunlight pierced through newly repaired dome runs, every scrap of parchment seemed to kindle, glowing bright as embers yet untouched by flame. That night, as lanterns flickered along neatly paved avenues, Daenerys lay awake beside Jon, listening to the quiet hum of a city rebuilding itself. She thought of the roads still rutted, of the hungry still waiting for grain, of men like Stannis who held lonely vigil at the edges of the world. She knew peace was no throne. Peace was a loom, requiring constant hands and careful thread lest holes form. Yet for the first time since she had stepped from the red waste onto the deck of a battered cog bound for Qarth, she allowed herself to breathe without tasting iron on the air. Jon stirred, mumbling half-formed words, then settled. Outside their balcony, Drogon perched on a buttress, eyes aflame in moonlight, wings tucked, the guardian no wall could rival. Beyond him, the city's new bell, cast from remnants of the ruined Sept Bell, tolled midnight softly. It rang not in warning, but in promise. An echo rolling across starlit rooftops, drifting up the Blackwater, gliding over sheepfolds of the Reach, brushing the pines of the north, carrying through jagged passes of the Vale, whispering even to the lonely stones of the wall where Stannis stood, face to the wind, hearing distant chime and letting its distant warmth settle into his battered heart. In distant Essos, the red priests kindled their braziers, saw shapes shift in flames. A throne shaped like open book, a crown afloat upon spring blossoms, a shadow of dragon's wings spanning horizon not in menace but as shelter. They murmured the words Azor Adak, the bringer of dawn, and wondered whether prophecy had finally found its long-awaited end. Yet prophecy cared little for ends, and neither did history. Its rivers coiled onward, fed by choices still to come. By a queen who dreamed of knowledge sown like grain, by a king who bore the weight of night so others might rest easy, by orphans learning script beneath candlelight, by maids forging arrowheads of black glass though their arms ached, by old kings stubbornly guarding a wall against tempests yet unwoken, by giants who planted saplings where they once crushed foes, by sellswords who discovered coin enough in peace, by sailors who carried books in watertight chests, and perhaps one day, seasons hence, when children paused before a hearth in some humble steading and asked their grandsire how morning first came to the world, he would speak not of swords clanging or towers collapsing but of a bell ringing over a city reborn, of paper wishes catching sun, of dragons made gentle, and wolves guarding papers instead of prey. He would say the hardest wars are fought in quiet hours, when no songs play and no banners fly, and he would tell them that the realm triumphed because people from every corner learned to share both fire and night, and to pass them carefully one to another like torches on a long road, never letting either burn unchecked, never letting either die. In bed, Daenerys finally drifted into dream. She saw wide rivers reflecting dawn, crossroads filled with song, towers built of stone and story. Overall, the wind carried one refrain, words old as the world, reborn in many tongues yet meaning always the same. The night has passed, the morning is ours. Guard it well and let it grow.